The Freedom Convoy is finished as police clear out the final trucks from the trucker convoy protest. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. And unfortunately, a lot of the videos of the trampled granny have been covered up. So we're not going to see that, but we will talk just a bit about what happened with that and where that went. In other news, Biden and Putin have agreed, supposedly, to meet in France, although in the overnight hours it seems that Putin has said that no such agreement is coming off of this. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that and what that means. Governments are going to see the biggest inflation-driven drop in debt ratios, possibly. So funny numbers to make sure that we don't get mired down in an inflationary argument. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. And the judge has temporarily released blocked the release of Bob Saget's autopsy records because there's nothing to hide here. It is going to be all this and much, much more because it's Monday on Contemporary, and we are still catching up with some of the news from Friday. So strap yourselves in. We're going to be here till probably 10 today, and we will see what happens throughout that. And, well, you're just mad you can't date me. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. See, if you guys watched on the Instagram side, you could see that every day because I do that while I have the title card up over here on Contemporary. So we are a little bit behind the 8 ball right now, but of course I don't have to go to work after this. I would like to get out of here at a decent time because the Daily Ignoramus will be returning to Monday coming up here. I believe today, so I haven't seen an announcement that he's not going to be streaming today, so I don't want to overlap too much on his time. He's moved his time so we don't overlap with him, so we've got to get right down to it. But there were some technical difficulties. By the way, I'm on Rumble now. I don't know if you guys know that or not. I am now officially on Rumble, but I set up the live stream, and it's not connecting right now, so I got to do some technical stuff off of that. I'm sitting here waiting, I'm like, why isn't this starting? Why isn't this starting? Why isn't this starting? And, well, it never started, and it keeps telling me it's unable to connect. So we're going to have to test that a little bit here. You might see a couple test streams from me pop up throughout the day here, so it's just going to be a globe and some lettering, and probably not anything else here, but, I mean, yeah, we're going to... The writing's on the wall. The days on YouTube are numbered. Rumble is growing, and, I mean, there's place to grow over on Rumble. It's not just you're sitting there with no content and wondering if anybody's going to follow you anymore. There is actually a place to grow on there. They'll actually promote videos off of this. And I'm sure, especially in the time slot that we're in, getting a live stream out on Rumble, once we do get it all figured out and set up, is going to be key to growing an audience because people are going to get up, look at a Rumble for news, and hey, there's a live stream going on right there in the early morning, where a lot of people like me are usually at the regular day job. Mine is luckily shifted to a mid shift so I can get up and do this, but a lot of people are out the day job. I think once we get up and streaming on Rumble, I think that we're going to do very, very well with that. So definitely watch for that. I have the link over on Twitter. I don't have it prepared to get up here because I thought I was going to be live streaming instead. But definitely by KTZed Redemption, I will have the Rumble link ready to go in the chat and ready to go. So you can go and follow us over there. I'll put that on a loop too, so you guys can go follow it on the KTZed Redemption chat. Just, you know, you don't have to be there at the top to go and say, hey, here's our Rumble. I'll put it on the loop, so you'll see it every, like, 17 minutes or something. But definitely, go and check out Rumble. It's going to be a good platform, I think, just from seeing what they have going on off of there. And with Truth Social getting ready to launch, and the fact that Truth Social owns Rumble, I think it's going to be a good time. Let's get the live chat up here. Maybe I've been muted this whole time on this whole rant, and nobody fucking knows. I have no idea. I do that sometimes here. But we got to get into it. We got to get started. But before we get started, as mentioned, the Daily Ignoramus returns to Monday. And I advertise for the Daily Ignoramus because he has become a part, once we get up and launched, of Turns of Pages Productions. TurnsOfPagesProductions.com will be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Once we get up and running and started, we need to raise about $1,500 for startup costs for that. So KTZed will be on there. That I'm going to be doing this later on today. I wanted to do it yesterday, but a headache completely fucking derailed me. But yeah, we'll get up there. We'll get a fundraiser going for that off of our good friends over at KTZed, who stood up to the Canadian government. Good on them. If they'll stand up to the government, they'll stand up for us. I'm pretty pumped about that. So go check that out. That'll be coming up here probably by KTZed Redemption. We'll probably get that started. But go bookmark the page and go check out the great shows that we will be featuring on there, such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The Porch Boys, The R-Rated Conservative, and the new upcoming project that is happening with Britt and Sean Hickman. It's going to be a good time, so we'd love to see you over there. We'd love to have you hanging out with all of our great creators, including new creators that we're also planning to feature on the website as well. We are planning to feature up-and-coming writers, new people, people who just want to blog, people who just want to put out a ranty article, perhaps, and never want to write again. A lot of people like that, or a lot of a lot of people who want to go and write for a political website, but, you know, everybody else requires a staff writer. You know, a lot of great people could come to Turns of Pages Productions if we get it up there and get it marketed properly here. But go check out the page for now, and we will get started. Let's look at finance for the morning. The Dow was down on Friday, down to 34,079.18. That was kind of another whipsaw day where it came up and crested the previous close, but then sank back below it, stayed below it, tried again, but sank down and tried one more time to stay below. Now, I believe the markets are closed today for President's Day. We'll see once we get into the main articles coming off of that. Whether or not that is true, I can't remember if that's a bank holiday or not. I think it is because my bank is closed. I know, because I looked at the sign and said, shit, I better go get quarters on Friday because I need to do wash. Like, if I get a P.O. box, would you guys send me quarters? I think that would be cool. Better than even the PayPal. Hey, let's do some quarters. But, yeah, we'll see what's happening on the markets here today. It looks like the futures are kind of suffering right now, looking and seeing what it is that Putin's going to do. So we will see what happens with that. Your Bitcoin over the last 24 hours has dropped another $1,000 US, 37,422 US dollars and 60 US cents. That dropped 2.52% over the last 24 hours. But over the last couple days, if you'll notice, that has also dropped another $5,000 per coin throughout this. So, hey, Bitcoin's on sale again. And remember, by the way, you're only a true libertarian if you have shed all of your assets. Get rid of all your gold, all your solid precious metals, all your fiat, everything else that the evil government uses, and invest everything in Bitcoin. Note, this is not official financial advice. This is a troll to people who believe that Bitcoin is the future, or at least try to convince you to do so. Always consult with a financial advisor before you make any major financial plans. So, that's what we see coming off of that. The scrap actually should be a little bit interesting, especially if people are anticipating going to war here, because the copper, as usual, is up because they need something to make the brass to make those shells out of. Copper is on the rise, steel is on the rise, aluminum is on the fall on the averages. All of your copper is in the green right now. All of your steel is in the green right now. Aluminum is a little bit more mixed with that. Siding is down, aluminum copper fin is down. Regular radiators are up, aluminum cans are up, sheet aluminum is down, and rims are up. Looking at your other plays, electric motors are down, ballasts are down, lead is up, car and truck batteries are down. Catalytic converters remain the same place that they were at, with a small foreign cat on the rise, but all of the catalytic converters are down. Remember, do not crawl under a Toyota Prius to go and steal somebody else's catalytic converter, because you might die. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is up, hard drives are down, motherboards are up, all other tech plays are down. So that is what we're seeing coming back in out of the metal prices. Let's grab one from Market Watch first. Usually I start with IBD, but I wanted to get to this one first before we got to the to what's happening over on IBD over there. Wow, I just lost my place completely inside of my own head. Stock futures reverse early losses after Biden, Putin agree in principle to summit. And this was at probably about, when did they say this was? About 7 o'clock last night when this was first published? Yeah, 7:11 Eastern time. 6:11 in real time. From Mike Murphy. U.S. stock futures traded higher on Monday after an announcement that President Brandon and Russia's Vladimir Putin have agreed in principle to a summit to ease tensions over the Ukraine. Dow Industrial Average futures, S&P 500 futures, and NASDAQ futures fell sharply to start Sunday's trading session, but recovered and surged into positive territory following news of the potential summit. Dow futures, once down nearly 100 points on Sunday, were up about 256 points on Monday as of 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Oil prices initially jumped near $93 a barrel before setting back down in the summit announcement. As of early Monday, West Texas Intermediate crude was back in positive territory at around $91.33 a barrel. A potential war between Russia and the Ukraine could send oil prices over $100 a barrel, analysts have warned. And guess who pays for that at the pump? Late Sunday, President Emmanuel Macron's office said Biden and Putin have agreed in principle to a summit in the coming weeks after a series of conversations with the French leader, but only if Russia does not invade the Ukraine. And by the way, I've been called on this a little bit from you guys before, but I grew up in the 90s. I sat down and listened to Carmen Sandiego. I watched that when I was a kid, and Nick News at the time. And in the 90s, it was still called the Ukraine. It is still a force of habit for me to say the Ukraine, unfortunately. So, the V sticks. I'm sorry. I know it's just Ukraine now, but it's still habit for me to say the Ukraine. The president confirmed in the announcement. President Biden accepted in principle meeting with President Putin again. If an invasion hasn't happened, we're ready for diplomacy. White House press secretary red-haired bobblehead said on Sunday night. Wasn't she supposed to quit at like the first or second week of the year, I thought? Because she wanted to go home and spend time with her kids again? Let's see. But that's what we see coming off of that. That's what everybody was hopeful for late last night. But you can already see where the numbers might actually be now. So let's go into IBD and see what's happened now early in the morning. And this was updated 25 minutes ago. Dow futures fall as Russia says Biden-Putin summit, not concrete plan, from Ed Carson. Dow futures fell Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures, as Russia said there was no concrete plan yet for a Biden-Putin summit. Futures turned positive Sunday night as the White House said President Biden had agreed in principle to a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Before the Biden-Putin summit news, futures fell sharply Sunday evening on fears of a Ukraine invasion. Russian troops remain massed near much of Ukraine's borders. The stock market rally suffered a significant damage last week, with the major indices below key support and starting to move towards their January 24th lows. Ukraine invasion fears were weighing heavily on the market rally, which is already dealing with inflation and other big headwinds. Investors should take a defensive posture with minimal exposure. U.S. stock markets are closed Monday for President's Day holiday, which I'm really curious as to why they started trading futures on Sunday if they're closed on Monday. Because usually they'll trade futures at 6 p.m. on the day before the next market open, which is usually at 6 p.m. on Sunday. So I don't know why they're trading futures right now, but I guess we'll see what happens. On the summit, President Biden agreed in principle to meet Putin. We'll talk about that in its own separate article, which I believe is at the top of the Russia. Yep, right at the top of the Russia one. On other Russia-Ukraine news, Russia claimed Monday that its army destroyed 2 Ukrainian APCs that allegedly crossed into Russian territory and killed 5 Ukrainian soldiers. Well, that'll be fun. On the futures, Dow futures fell 0.4% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures sank 0.6%, and NASDAQ futures retreated 1%. All rose modestly on Sunday night in the initial reaction to the Biden-Putin summit. Dow and S&P 500 futures had been down 1% or more Sunday evening, with NASDAQ futures down over 2%. Crude oil rose modestly. While the Dow opened on Sunday evening, as usual, U.S. markets will be closed on Monday in observance with President's Day. Other stock markets were open around the world, however. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere don't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. A couple ones that don't suck, by the way. Let's just grab this first paragraph here to kind of give you an idea if you want to talk to your financial advisor. Apple, O'Reilly Automotive, which is really, really interesting. Commercial Metals, Union Pacific, and Nutrien are 5 stocks holding up near buy points with relative strength lines at or near highs. So if you're looking for something to bring up to your financial advisor and say, hey, do you think this will work for me? There you go. There's 5 for you right there. All right, let's start out with this. And I couldn't decide whether to start out with the Russia stuff or the Ottawa stuff. And honestly, the Ottawa stuff won. Because a lot of what the news is doing right now is trying to get us to pay attention to Russia and forget about the fact that the government is violently cracking down on its citizenry over in Canada. Let me draw this down just a touch. There we go. All right, and we are going to start with the New York Post today. Ottawa cops cleared out last Freedom Convoy protesters after 24 days. Just a little bit over 3 weeks. And I like that sign too, by the way. The right side of history. This is from Patrick Riley. Ottawa police attempted to clear out the remaining Freedom Convoy demonstrators on Sunday, ending a 24-day occupation. I love how the fact, by the way, that it's a mostly peaceful protest. If it's, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, or whatever, it's just a protest, but it's an occupation. It's a violent occupation. And they've got to come out and use these kind of words. And I mean, this is the New York Post. This is supposed to be the standard bearer of conservative news, according to the Hunter Biden laptop story. This is the standard bearer of conservative news right here. The evil conservative New York Post. They're not even a newspaper. They're a conservative tabloid. It wasn't an occupation. If anything, this was an actual, mostly peaceful protest. Yeah, a few people got rowdy and those people got arrested, as they should have, because what's the first rule? Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. And if they started hurting people, yeah, go back and pick them all up. But, you come out, You honk the horns, you make people uncomfortable, as AOC said with the protest. That's not occupation. And I would be willing to change my mind on this, by the way, too. I'd be willing to come back and say, okay, well, you're right. They came in, they occupied. But as I said, when they first started calling this insurrection, occupation, this, that, and the next thing, my terms were simple. If you apply the same terminology to what happened in Kenosha, then I will hear you out as to whether or not this was an occupation. If you are willing to call what happened east of 22nd Avenue in Kenosha an occupation, I can't guarantee I will still call this an occupation, but I'll at least hear you out. But this, as of right now, the way it sits and with the narrative that the mainstream news has given me, this was not an occupation. At least 2 people were arrested as police moved into the logistics camp and removed the last vehicles occupying the area, according to the Ottawa Citizen. The convoy of trucks has caused traffic backups in the city for weeks. A total of 191 protesters were arrested and 57 vehicles were towed since police began forcefully removing them on Friday. Who the fuck did you get to tow the vehicles, by the way? The camp, located in a city parking lot and Coventry Road, amassed 100 vehicles. Across the street, several tents had been erected for meetings and meals, as well as a trailer with heated toilets. 2 saunas, the paper reported. Officials are now concerned that the protesters, many of them truckers, will regroup outside the Capitol and come back, shutting the city down again. Well, that's what happens when you crack down on your citizenry, and there's more of them than there are of you. We're trying to keep tabs on those that are leaving and potentially massing to come back. Ottawa Police Chief Steve Bell said at the press conference on Sunday. Oh, so he's officially the chief now. He's not interim anymore. Great. On Sunday, Ottawa Police said businesses should feel comfortable reopening following the weeks-long demonstration. Yeah, pretty much, Ron Helton. Businesses should feel safe to reopen if they had closed during this unlawful assembly, Ottawa Police said. Businesses and residents, we thank you for your patience throughout the operation. Supporting local businesses is considered lawful if you are entering the secured area. Bell said Ottawans can expect a heavy police presence in the area on coming days. He told reporters at a press briefing on Sunday that his department has a long road ahead in restoring the public's trust of his department. Yeah, they do. But see, that's because you did a lot of things that make the people not trust your department, like trampling a little old lady. Maybe they do it that way in Canada, but I mean, working around the industry, for the most part, they don't do that here. The municipality contracts out with a local tow company. They woke up this morning to fencing and a very heavy police presence throughout the downtown core. While I know everyone is pleased to see many of the unlawful protests are gone, this is not the normal state of our city, Bell said. We know as a police service we have the public trust to gain back. Hey, photographer, can you pan a little bit out to the right here so we can see who not to give business to? Police swooped into the area occupied by protesters on Friday to squash the blockade, leading to several scuffles between cops and demonstrators. On Saturday, police... Oh, by the way, if you're in the Ottawa area and you see on the advertisements on the website a lot of white and a lot of red and you need to have your truck towed to the local dealership, don't use that one. Because, again, we can't see who the company is, but we can see what their truck looks like, and that's usually the company colors. So keep wary and stay away from white and red. I realize it's Canada, that's what their flag looks like, so it's going to be difficult, but... And of course, even though it's zoomed out, and I mean on my resolution I can't see it, of course we have to go and see the company name of the truck on the side of the truck. Of course we do! On Saturday, police used pepper spray and stun grenades to remove those who remained, clearing most of the area in front of Parliament and next to the Prime Minister's office. "We told you to leave," Ottawa police said in a tweet on Saturday, which we have up here, by the way. "We gave you time to leave. We were slow and methodical, yet you were assaultive and aggressive with officers and the horses." Most of those arrested were slapped with mischief charges, and dozens of vehicles have been towed, including all of those blocking one of Ottawa's major streets, authorities said. Iowa's major street, I mean, the only major street in Iowa is Highway 151, but we're talking about Ottawa, not Iowa. Ottawa represented the movement's final stronghold after 3 weeks of trucker demonstrations and American border blockades created a political crisis for Justin Trudeau. So, there you go. The demonstration is over. They might come back, so we have to stay in a heavy police presence to make sure that they don't come back. And we'll check your papers every time you come in here to make sure you're not an evil trucker. And if you have a CDL, that's the thing that gets me. Like, what happens now if you're just driving along in your Honda in Ottawa and you get pulled over because you missed the stop sign or something, and those Ottawa police see that you've got a CDL and you're from out of town? What happens at that point? Because I don't think this is over. I think this is the last we're going to hear from it for mainstream news, but I don't think this is over. Let's keep going. Let's grab one from CNN World. Canadian authorities freeze financial assets for those involved in ongoing protests in Ottawa. From Aya, Ella Marusi, Holly Yan, and Amir Vera. A weeks-long blockade in the Canadian capital has led to almost 200 arrests and prolonged suffering for businesses caught in the middle of protests against the pinko pox mandates. I believe they did use tear gas, by the way. Canadian authorities on Sunday froze the finances associated with certain individuals and companies believed to be involved in the ongoing protests, so not even with due process, just on suspicion. According to Mike Duhem, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Deputy Commissioner of Federal Policing. The RCMP froze 206 financial products, including bank and corporate accounts, disclosed the information of 56 entities associated with vehicles. Are you fucking serious? Individuals and companies shared 253 Bitcoin addresses with virtual currency exchangers and froze a payment processing account valued at $3.8 million, Duhem said at a news conference. So, not only did you come out and do this, did you come out and nationalize their financial records, or, I'm sorry, their finances, the actual money they had in the account, because you know, as well as I do, that if they have the access to do that, they're going to be appropriating that money because we need to pay for what happened with our police force. We need to pay for the extra policing that went off with this. You know that's coming. Not only that, but you doxed every one of these people. Are you fucking serious right now? We continue to work at collecting relevant information in persons, vehicles and companies, and remain in the daily communication with the financial institutions to assist them, Duhem said. As a result, investigators are also looking at 2 police-involved incidents Saturday at the protests in Ottawa, authorities said on Sunday. Yes, I bet you that's going to be completely objective too. The province's Special Investigations Unit is investigating 2 police-involved incidences that occurred at the demonstrations in Ottawa's yesterday and is urging anyone who has information, including video, to come forward, Ontario's SIU said. Preliminary information indicates that around 5:14 p.m. Saturday, there was an interaction between a Toronto Police Service officer on a horse and a 49-year-old woman on Rideau Street and Mackenzie Avenue. The woman has reported serious injury, the SIU said. She threw a bicycle at the horse. Separately, at approximately 7:18 p.m., Vancouver Police Department officers discharged anti-riot weapons and fields, less lethal firearms, at individuals in the area of Spark Street and Bank Street. No injuries have been reported at this time, the agency said on Sunday. The SIU asked anyone who may have been struck by a projectile to contact the unit. Yeah, okay. Yes, come down here and confess to the fact that you were down here to the point that police had to fire something at us. We promise nothing bad will happen to that. And that's the other side of that, too. No injuries were reported. You're in Canada right now. I'm going to tell you this right now. Like, I don't go to the hospital, period. I don't go to the doctor, I don't go to the hospital because the insurance that's offered to me through my work sucks. For the premium and the deductible I have to pay, it is a full quarter of my yearly wage, pre-tax. Before the insurance starts paying for anything, I have to pay a full quarter of my yearly wage between premium and deductible before my insurance pays for anything. No thanks. I just won't use the services. Plain and fucking simple. But with that being said, if you're in Canada, you've just found out that the police are getting ready to come back and crack down on you. They've trampled a little old lady in the street because she threw a bicycle at a police officer, and all you see is a walker laying down with her. And you also know that the government is freezing bank accounts. Would you actually go to the hospital and report your injury? Or would you take first aid and hope for the best? Protesters and idling trucks have blocked the streets of Ottawa. Some demonstrators have said they won't budge until the mitigation efforts, such as mask and vaccination requirements, are lifted. By Sunday morning, Ottawa police said they had arrested 191 people. Tensions escalated Saturday when police used pepper spray to disperse crowds. Protesters outside Wellington Street in front of Parliament were arrested. Ottawa Interim Police Chief Steve Bell said in a news conference, "We have been here for 3 weeks. I've been at this podium for the last 5 days imploring people to leave, asking them to get off of our streets. This occupation is over. We have advised them that if they peacefully leave, they may go home," he said. "We also indicated that we would escalate and forcibly remove people from the streets if they did not comply." So, that's what they had to say about that. Let's grab one from the Associated Press. Ottawa crackdown. Police arrest 100 after 3-week protest. From Rob Gillies, Wilson Ring, and Robert Bumstead. Protesters react as Toronto police mounted units move to disperse them as police take action to put an end to the protest, which started in opposition to mandatory vaccine mandates. Let's just look at the pictures here. There are the boards right there. Mandate freedom. Come on. Police are going into the truck to go yank somebody back out of there. More peaceful protest. More mounted police above peaceful protest. There he is again, going through and seeing what it is that'll get turned over to the state. I mean, what it is in the cab of this truck that will be useful in the investigation as to why the truck came there, and totally not get appropriated by the state. Yes, what a violent protest right here. Look at that old Ram, by the way. I bet you that brings some memories back for Sully. Look at the dog with his mittens on. That's cute. I like that. Alright. That's what we see coming off of that. Let's read. Police arrested scores of demonstrators and towed away vehicles Friday in Canada's besieged capital, and a stream of trucks started leaving under the pressure, raising authorities' hopes for an end to the 3-week protests against the country's pinko-pox restrictions. By evening, at least 100 people have been arrested, mostly on mischief charges, and nearly 24 vehicles have been towed, including all those blocking one of the city's major streets. Authorities said one officer had a minor injury, but no protesters were hurt, Interim Ottawa Police Chief Steve Bell said. Those arrested included 4 of the protest leaders. One received bail, while others remained jailed. The crackdown on the self-styled Freedom Convoy began in the morning when hundreds of police officers, some in riot gear and some carrying automatic weapons, descended into the protest zone and began leading demonstrators away in handcuffs through the snowy streets as holdout truckers blared their horns. Tow operators wearing neon green ski masks with their company's decals taped over. Oh yes, of course. Of course they are, because, we can't be associated with coming out of here because we might lose business. They might shut down our businesses. Tow operators wearing neon green ski masks and with their company's decals taped over to conceal their identities. You know what? These protesters came in there with their full decals on display because they wanted to protest for what was right. I'm going to tell you this right now. If you had to cover up your company decal, you're in the wrong, and you know you're in the fucking wrong. Holy shit, I hadn't seen that before. I bet the US DOT, or I guess it would be Canadian DOT number, but their DOT numbers were also taped over too. What a fucking shock. What a fucking shock. I arrived under police escort and started removing hundreds of big rigs, campers, and I bet you they got threatened with having their business licenses pulled. I bet you anything. Scuffles broke out in places, and police repeatedly went nose to nose with the protesters and pushed the crowd back amid cries of freedom and the singing of the national anthem, O Canada. Later, police on horses were used to push back the crowd for a time. Police said in the afternoon that protesters had assaulted officers and tried to take their weapons. Some began dismantling equipment at a stage where they had played music for weeks, saying they didn't want it to get destroyed. Many protesters stood their ground in the face of one of the biggest police enforcement actions in Canada's history, with officers drawn from around the country. Freedom was never free, said trucker Kevin Hammond of Montreal, so what if they put the handcuffs on us and put us in jail? But a steady procession of trucks began leaving Parliament Hill in the afternoon. There are indications that we're now starting to see progress, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said. Police would not disclose how many protesters or vehicles remained downtown. All indicators were that police would be working into the weekend to clear the area. And yes, by the end of Sunday, of course, everybody was cleared out. Everything's okay. The evil protesters that aren't protesting against us and for Black lives, they're taken out of here. We're gonna crack down on these ones because they're not protesting against us right now. But that's what we see off of that. This one kind of pissed me off, I'm not going to lie. Because we talked about the nationalization of your bank account and your banking system, which, by the way, if you're in this country and you're using TD North, Toronto, I can't think of what the other word is. What does TD North stand for? That's why you have a research tab. Toronto Dominion. Yeah, Dominion, that's a good word for it right now. If you are in Toronto Dominion Bank right now, get out. Get your funding out of there. Because your funding is subject to the Canadian government's whims. I wouldn't have used them in the first place, but if you were in TD Bank, get the fuck out of there. I'm not going to advertise for anything else. I like my bank, but I'm not going to say who it is, obviously. I like both of my banks, actually. I think they're awesome. But I'm not going to say who they are. But yeah, if you're in TD Bank, get the fuck out of that. From CTV News, though, Cell towed trucks to pay down the cost of police and convoy protests, Ottawa mayor suggests. So what, you're just going to nationalize the means of production? Is that what this is? You've towed this truck and now you all of a sudden own it? No, I don't fucking think you do. You are not going to appropriate $95,000 to $225,000 worth of truck from good, hardworking American citizens. And pay attention, by the way, all you little leftoids out here. Think about what is happening here, because this was an actual workers' protest. I know that you've been convinced by watching MSDNC and CNN and all these other ones out here, and CNBC and all these other leftoid networks, that this was an evil occupation. This was just the exact same as January 6th. And all these people were evil, and it doesn't matter. And this wasn't a workers' protest. This was a workers' protest. This is from Ted Raymond. Let's listen to what the mayor has to say, then we'll read some of the article.
Ottawa's Mayor Jim Watson joins us now. Mayor Watson, you faced some harsh criticism through all of this. If you could do things over again, what would you change, if anything?
Well, first and foremost, better intelligence coming from our intelligence sources, that these individuals were coming not just for a protest, but they were bringing enough material that they wanted to become squatters and occupy the streets. And secondly, how these vehicles came and were not stopped by anyone on Wellington. Excuse me, Wellington is not a truck route, obviously. It's the most important street in the city because it houses the Parliament buildings as well as the Supreme Court. So these kinds of things are going to come out in the report that my colleagues, Councillor Hubley and Tierney, asked for a full independent review. And then under the Emergency Act that is being debated as we speak, they also have to do a proper and independent review, because we have to find out, A, what went wrong, and B, how do we prevent this from happening again? Because there are probably a lot of copycats out there, and the last thing we want is next weekend or July 1st for more of these yahoos to arrive in Ottawa and cause such angst and disruption in so many people's lives.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have to tell you.
Back on. So there are a couple things that are going on with what it is that they had to say about this. First and foremost, I mean, this obviously you were completely ill-prepared for this, and I don't know how. Well, we've got to see more intelligence as to these truckers that are coming across. They started telling you about it in October, that they were going to do it. You had the intelligence. You knew this was coming. Everybody knew this was coming. Your prime minister came out and said, no, there isn't going to be a protest out of this. This is just going to be a small fringe minority, and don't pay attention to this at all, because nothing's going to happen here. Don't pay attention to these people, eh? Let's see what it is that they had to say in the article. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson is suggesting that some of the trucks and other vehicles seized by police during the two-day operation to clear out the Freedom Convoy protest, an occupation, could be used to pay for some of the policing costs. As of Saturday, the police have towed 53 vehicles from the downtown streets since the movement began Friday to remove them, some of which have been occupying the area for 3 full weeks. Speaking to CTV News, Ottawa Watson said this could be a chance to recoup some of the cost of the massive police action. I've asked our city manager, for instance, how we can take possession of all these trucks that have been towed away. You think that taking possession, just taking, without recompense, by the way, a $225,000 vehicle is acceptable, first and foremost. And B, is not going to turn the workers of your country against you? You are out of your fucking mind. How can we confiscate and sell those trucks that help pay for some of our costs? I don't think the taxpayers of Ottawa should be paying for this multi-billion or million-dollar bill that we're going to be saddled with because of the irresponsibility and the illegal activities of a bunch of truckers and others who showed up with little regard for our community and its people. Well, since you house the capital, go up onto Parliament Hill and tell the people in Parliament and the Prime Minister himself Stop doing stupid shit. Earlier in the day, the mayor said he believed the Federal Emergencies Act would call for such action. These people have cost the taxpayers of Ottawa millions and millions of dollars. That's only police costs. That's counting all the extraordinary costs the city's had to absorb. By law, fire, paramedics, public workspace, he said. It shouldn't be up to the taxpayers of Ottawa to pay for those extraordinary costs through their own property taxes. We should ding those people who have caused this chaos. City Treasurer Wendy Stevenson had earlier indicated the city's costs were approximately $1 million per day. MPs have been debating the use of the Emergencies Act, which grants broad sweeping powers to the government since Thursday. However, the public order emergency declared on Monday it's already being enforced and will continue to be for 30 days unless parliamentarians vote to revoke it. It's unclear whether Watson's plan will proceed. Ottawa police said vehicles that were towed would be impounded for 7 days and gave instructions how to retrieve them once the impoundment is ended. There's no price tag for the massive 2-day operation that cleared the vehicles out of the downtown core and led to 170 arrests. Police have previously said it cost more than $14 million to cover just some of the policing costs over the first 18 days of the occupation. That is a you problem. And with any luck, after this, a lot of people are going to start moving out of Ottawa. With any luck, Ottawa's going to start clearing out in a fucking hurry. And your property values and therefore your property taxes are going to tank as well. Love to see that, but especially if you think that you're going to nationalize the means of production. And that's exactly what this is, too. But that's what we see off of that. This is the tweet that the Ottawa police gave out. Protesters, we told you to leave. We gave you time to leave. We are slow and methodical, yet you were assaultive and aggressive with officers and the horses. Based on your behavior, we are responding by including helmets and batons for our safety. After you assaulted people and they defended themselves, now you have to have helmets and batons for your safety. Fuck you. I like this one. Wind Talker. Who we thought Canadian police were versus who Canadian police really are. That's who we thought that they were. Always do right, Dudley do right. And what they actually are. Democracy with a swinging club. Alright. Here's a little bit of a white pill for you. I'm sure that this, of course, is not going to go anywhere because this gets vetoed almost immediately if it can even pass in Democrat-controlled House and Senate. A Republican congresswoman introducing legislation to grant temporary asylum to Canadian truck drivers. From Ryan Saavedra. This right here, excuse me. Pay attention, American people. This right here is a good enough reason to give Republicans control of the House and Senate and a veto-proof majority. Get out the vote right here. Because this is dead. This is dead on arrival. This isn't even going to get to the floor to debate. Representative Yvette Harrell announced over the weekend that she is going to introduce legislation that would grant temporary asylum to Canadian truck drivers that are protesting Canada's coronavirus mandates. The announcement from Harrell comes as Canadian truckers have protested for weeks over the mandates and have been met with increasingly tyrannical responses from Canada's leftist government. Trudeau's heavy-handed crackdown against peaceful protesters in Canada is not the action of a Western democracy, but that of an authoritarian regime like Venezuela, Harrell said. Just as we provide asylum for political prisoners, we should do the same for truckers who've been subjected to violence, had their property confiscated, and their bank accounts frozen, and probably confiscated, give it time, by a government that is quickly becoming the embarrassment of the free world. I'm introducing excuse me, I'm introducing legislation that would temporarily grant asylum to innocent Canadian protesters who are being persecuted by their own government, she continued. We cannot be silent as our neighbors to the north are treated so badly. The Daily Wire reported late last week that the coalition of Canadian church leaders slammed the leftist Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in a letter over his treatment of the truck drivers. The church leaders wrote in recent weeks, the hugely popular truckers' convoy containing many Christians, including pastors, has captured the imagination not only of this nation, but in other nations around the world, laying bare that we have expressed and argued for months is indeed representative of the concerns of millions of ordinary Canadians who value peace, personal responsibility, and liberty, The Ottawa protest has presented your government with a wonderful opportunity to meet and speak to ordinary Canadians lawfully and peacefully, requiring the restoration of their constitutional rights, However, in response to their singing and dancing, praying, dancing, candy floss, bouncy castles, speech, and the Constitution, speeches about the Constitution and outpourings of patriotic love for the country, Your government has not only refused to meet with these citizens to hear their concerns, but have also insulted, denigrated, and lied about them, further dividing a hurting and broken nation. Mr. Trudeau, with a great respect, you are neither the King nor the ruler of Canada. Both you and your colleagues are public servants sent for a short time to Parliament, at our behest, as citizens governed under God in terms of the Canadian Charter, and to seek a harmony of public legal interest. You do not grant the people rights and responsibilities that are theirs as God's image bearers and a free people, Since you do not grant them, you have no authority to remove them. That is a long letter, but it speaks the point, and it's not a bad idea to come back out, and this is an actual asylum claim. These are people that are actually being persecuted by the Canadian government. These are not people that are coming out and seeking and claiming asylum, but they're just out seeking a better financial life. These are actually people who are literally being persecuted by the government. We see it. They're talking about taking away their trucks and selling them for the common good. This is actual political persecution. But there again, unfortunately, and I'm glad that this got introduced, because now the Democrats can own voting against it. Because they love asylum seekers and they love that open border. As long as it's on the south and it's people that they control. But I want them to be on record shutting this shit down. I really do. I want all Democrats, and I hope, I don't think that she will, because I think she's a plant, but I hope Marjorie Taylor Greene forces this one down to the floor for a vote. I hope that she does. I hope that she proves me wrong, that she's a plant, and forces this down to the floor for a vote, because I want to see every name that's on this bill. But we will see what happens from that. Let's grab one from NBC. We gotta throw a refresh on this one here. Something from our side of the fence. Authorities consider reinstalling fence around the Capitol ahead of possible convoy protest. The fence is the same barrier that remained around the Capitol for months after the January 6th Selfie Fest and during the Justice for J6 rally. The Fed rally, basically. So that's going back up. Well, it is going back up, but we'll talk about that in a different article. From Frank Thorpe V and Tim Stello. Frank Thorpe must be a pretty popular name in that family, huh? Since there's 5 of them. Authorities are considering reinstalling a fence around the Capitol ahead of a possible trucker convoy protest during President Biden's State of the Union address next month, officials said on Friday. You know what? We're going to skip this one because now they've come to a decision off of this. I didn't know that they were going to do this with the State of the Union. But yes, they have come to a decision from this, according to the Daily Mail. Capitol perimeter fencing, erected after January 6th Selfie Fest, will be reinstalled ahead of Brandon's State of the Union address on March 1st as the Truckers' Freedom Convoy heads for Washington. Yeah, there's something I bet you haven't heard on the news for a whole lot. Yep, they're coming. And they're going to be full of fucking feds, too, by the way, just so you know. This is from Caitlin Carell, U.S. political reporter for DailyMail.com. The fencing that surrounded the Capitol complex for much of 2021 will be reinstalled next week as Congress prepares to host President Biden for his first State of the Union address on March 1st. U.S. Capitol Police are preparing for truckers protesting in the mask and vaccine mandates as the Freedom Convoy heads to Washington, D.C. after demonstrating in Canada for weeks and causing major blockades. The protesters were able to block the Ambassador Bridge border crossing between Windsor and Detroit as they expressed their distaste with the pinko-pox mandates related to mask wearing and the compulsory vaccinations. Now, Californians are planning to join an American protest dubbed the People's Convoy and head to the Washington, D.C. this week. Watch for glowy ones and make absolutely sure that you never ever do not participate in any sort of violence whatsoever. And if that fence happens to fall over mysteriously, do not go into the Capitol. Now, I would advise you, of course, to stay away from the Capitol entirely off of this, but I always do. Because usually when there's a very well-known protest that's starting to happen, usually it's been infiltrated by the FBI. But if this is something that you want to do and you need to do, I would actually like to see Washington, D.C. blockaded for a couple days. I want to see if the National Guard will actually launch a nuke at D.C. itself or not. Like Eric Swalwell said that they would. But remember, do not raise a hand to anybody, no matter who in the crowd tells you that you need to. Stay in your cabin as much as you can, so you can't be enticed to go down and join into a mob, and stay away from the Capitol building. It is a trap. Stay away from the Capitol building. If that fence falls over, it is a trap, and I guarantee you that fence is going to fall over. And I guarantee you that fence is going to fall over just conveniently in the midst of the State of the Union address. Stay away from the Capitol building. Stay far, far away from the Capitol building. This new demonstration plans to depart from Barstow, which it looks like Linda Cloud is saying that she is in or near Barstow. So yes, they're organizing in Barstow right now on I-40 on Wednesday, February 23rd. National organizer of the effort, Maureen Steele, said she would not disclose the specific location for fear of retribution. Steele told Newsmax that somewhere around 1,000 truckers are expected to start the trip, and she expects more will join as the convoy heads east. The Canadian convoy was pretty organic when it happened, Steele acknowledged. Ours, they had a month's notice, so our concern is disruptive groups coming in. We're trying to just prepare for the counter-protests and take safety precautions for that. Stay away from the Capitol building. Stay away. No matter how enticing it looks, once that fence falls. This is about our rights as well as freedom for future generations, convoy organizers wrote on Facebook. It's not about political parties, but more so about a government that has forgotten its place and has no regard for our founding fathers' instructions. Amen. So, and that, again, that is something that you definitely need to watch. And, I mean, you look at this fencing here that is supposedly so solid that nobody can come back and knock it down. And then Cori Bush says, well, I'm going to sleep homeless on the Capitol steps to protest for people that are being evicted. Meanwhile, that fence was up the whole time. But, again, I want to see DC get blockaded off. I want to see what happens. First and foremost, with that. And second off of this, I want to see if there actually is a convenient falling of the fence in the middle of the State of the Union. Because that sure would be awfully convenient. Let's grab another one from NBC. Shifting gears here, we're going to go talk about what's happening on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean.
Biden agrees in principle to meet Putin if Russia does not invade Ukraine. From Josh Lederman, Courtney Kube, and Dennis Romero. President Brandon and Russian President Vladimir Putin have agreed in principle to a summit to discuss the situation in Ukraine, allegedly. Now Putin is saying, I never agreed to such meeting. Where you get your information? But only as long as Russia does not invade its neighbor. The development, first announced in a statement by the French government after President Emmanuel Macron spoke to each leader separately, seemed to throw into question the timing of Russia's widely expected invasion of the Ukraine. Yeah, wasn't that supposed to happen yesterday, by the way? Any day now. No, excuse me. It's going to happen any day. Any day. Three sources, including two White House officials, said a final decision on such a summit would be made only after further talks between Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. But while the White House later confirmed that Biden had, in principle, agreed to the meeting, on Monday the Kremlin said there were no concrete plans for a summit, although the idea had not been ruled out, according to Russia's state-run TASS news agency. The Biden admin has repeatedly said that it was open to a meeting with Putin, the sources noted, before emphasizing that nothing has changed regarding the U.S. conclusion that a Russian invasion of Ukraine is imminent. White House Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobblehead said as much in a statement regarding the proposed summit. We're always ready for diplomacy, she said on Sunday. We're also ready to impose swift and severe consequences should Russia instead choose war. And currently, Russia appears to be continuing preparations for a full-scale assault on Ukraine very soon. We're going to circle back to that. Next question, please. The French government said in translation of its statement earlier that the summit can only be held on the condition that Russia does not invade the Ukraine. So, how it started, yes, Biden and Putin have definitely agreed to have this summit. How it's going. No, Putin said that he never agreed to this. What the fuck are you talking about? Let's grab one from our friends over here at NPR. Putin and Macron discuss a ceasefire in Ukraine as shelling appears to escalate, which means that somebody needs to go down to Antony Blinken and General Lloyd and tell them to stop the shelling so that they can have a ceasefire conversation. Will they stop the shelling? I don't know. This is from Joe Hernandez, and remember, NPR needs your money. So donate to them. The big red button is on the top. Your taxpayer dollars are not enough to hold them up. They need more money from you, so donate. Because it's not your money, comrade, it's our money. Let's see what they have to say. Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's read. French President Emmanuel Macron and Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke by phone on Sunday and agreed to work towards setting a meeting within hours to discuss a possible ceasefire in the Ukraine, the Élysée Palace said in a statement. The call came as heightened tensions added to ongoing violence between the Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed separatists in the east of the country, where shelling over the past few days left 2 Ukrainian soldiers dead and 5 injured, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. Shortly after his call with Putin, Macron spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who vowed to respect any possible ceasefire. Ukraine's foreign ministry said in a statement earlier on Sunday that Russian-backed separatists had continued firing mortars. Give me just 1 second. Had continued firing mortars along the Luhansk-Shastya humanitarian corridor in eastern Ukrainian region of Donbas that borders Russia. Meanwhile, Russian troops remain staged at the border, some of whom took part in the live-fire exercises on Saturday that President Vladimir Putin personally oversaw from Moscow. The Kremlin continues to insist it has no plans to invade the Ukraine. The Ukraine's allies, including the U.S., have continued to cast doubt on Moscow's assurances that it doesn't plan to invade. President Brandon has said he is convinced Russia will invade its neighbor. Biden was slated to convene a National Security Council meeting on Sunday. White House Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobble had announced a day earlier. Vice President Kamala Harris, speaking to reporters on Sunday after her appearance in the Munich Security Conference, warned about the potential for war to break out in Europe, which would be the largest conflict of its kind on the continent since World War II. How? It's one country with about 700 miles of border that touches either Russia or Russian allies. How is that the biggest war since World War II? Let's really take a moment to understand the significance of what we're talking about. It's been over 70 years, and through those 70 years I mentioned yesterday, there's been peace and security. Harris said, "We're talking about the real possibility of a war in Europe." Harris said that the U.S. and its allies were united in their plans to slap Russia with strong sanctions if they were to invade Ukraine, though she said the admin is still holding out for hope of a diplomatic solution to the crisis. So, with that, I mean, part of the problem is, and what I talk about with this, is it does seem that the majority of U.S. citizens at least believe that the shelling that's going on is, or at least was started by the U.S. Now, when it first happened, there was a big debate as to whether or not Russia was the one that was doing the shelling, or if it was the Ukraine trying to stage a false flag attack to get Russia provoked into a war. That was the big question there, and I still, to this day, I mean, with what happened with the kindergarten and what they're doing with the live fire drills outside of the border. Now, the live fire drills, obviously, those are Russia because those are being directly overseen by Putin. But the initial shelling, I have no proof to this, but you wouldn't surprise me at all if somebody came out and said, "Oh, hey, by the way, it was General Lloyd and Anthony Blinken and Joe Biden that set up the shelling because they wanted to get this pulled into war." If somebody came out and told me this and said they had definitive proof, I wouldn't even be shocked at this point. Because I've seen what it is that they come back and try to do constantly off of this. And it's not good. But the rest of Europe is trying to get this drawn down, and I still don't think that Russia has a direct plan to attack. At least not yet. I do think that there's still the possibility that a lot of this is Kiev being offered up on a shining platter and saying, "Come on, Vladimir! Hey, look! It looks like a nice, juicy piece of chicken, Kiev! Don't you want some of this, man? Come on! Come on, man!" Let's grab one from CBS. Maybe. Are they going to force me to turn my ad blocker off? Well, we'll see. Shelling intensifies in eastern Ukraine amid concerns Russia's creating a pretext for an invasion. From Haley Ott. Ukrainian forces and the pro-Russian separatists they're fighting in the country's east reported a second day of increased shelling on Friday as the leaders of the rebel self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics accused the Ukrainian government of planning an imminent attack. The rebel admin in the two breakaway regions announced plans to evacuate thousands of civilians into neighboring Russia. Western leaders say an escalation in the fighting in Ukraine's Donbass region, which has simmered for almost 8 years, could be part of Russia's efforts to create a false flag pretext to invade. Ukraine is not your enemy, but those who want to defend you against Ukraine are. Do not heed rumors about some offensive operation, Ukraine's defense minister said in a speech on Friday. We have no intentions to conduct any force actions towards Orlo, Donbass, and Crimea. At all, We will move by political and diplomatic way, because there are our citizens. We will not put them in danger. The Ukrainian government's reassurance didn't appear to be calming nerves in the rebel-held region. However, with social media photos purporting to show people lining up to take money out of banks, which is honestly probably not a bad idea. Russian officials seem to know little about the evacuation plans. Asked if Russia was ready to accept thousands of refugees from Donbass, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters on Friday, I don't know with whom there were contacts. I don't have any information. The reports came as America's defense chief said the U.S. has still seen no drawdown of the Russian forces massed around Ukraine's border. The U.S. envoy to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which was meeting with Germany on Friday, said the Russian deployment around Ukraine's borders had actually swelled between 169,000 and 190,000 troops, the biggest military buildup in Europe since World War II. Although Russia has announced it's moving forces back to garrison, we have yet to see that. In fact, we see more forces moving in the region that border region. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said, did I have his name wrong? I just kept calling him General Lloyd. He's General Austin, I'm sorry. Said during a press conference alongside his Polish counterpart on Friday, we also see them continuing to prepare by doing things that you'd expect military elements to do as they're preparing to launch an attack. Come on, a little piece of juicy chicken Kiev, let's go. But Russia continued issuing new claims that some of its soldiers and weapons were returning to their bases after planned military exercises, even as the Kremlin said President Vladimir Putin would personally oversee massive naval drills on Saturday involving the country's nuclear forces. So, yeah. And they've got the bombs too, so... Well, I guess my big thing is, once again, I hope that I get ghoulified in this whole thing so I can spend the rest of eternity, because I will be immortal and able to be healed by radiation, saying, hey, smooth skin, you want to buy some of this stuff? It's an honest living. The humans don't want me around. And the Brotherhood of Steel thinks that I don't deserve to live. But hey, smooth skin, you want some of this? Alright, what else do we have here? From Axios. White House believes Russia is behind cyber attacks in the Ukraine. Well, again, if you told me that it was the US behind it, I wouldn't be surprised. The U.S. believes Russia is responsible for recent cyber attacks in Ukraine. Deputy National Security Advisor for Cybersecurity Ian Neuberger said at the White House press briefing on Friday. The U.S. has warned that Russia's cyber attacks could proceed or be coordinated in tandem with military invasions. The targeting of Ukraine's defense ministry and several banks marked the largest denial of service attack in the country's history, per Axios' Zachary Basu. We have technical information that links to the Russian Main Intelligence Directorate, or GRU. It was seen transmitting high volumes of communication to Ukraine-based IP addresses and domains, Neuberger said. Yeah, but nobody knows who's behind the shelling, so your word is but to me at this point. But hey, the White House believes it's Russia, because it couldn't be anything else. Let's grab one from Reuters. Warning siren sounds in rebel-held capital in East Ukraine, Reuters witness. From Reuters. A loud warning siren sounded at the center of the East Ukrainian city of Donetsk on Friday after a Russian-backed separatist leader in the breakaway region announced an evacuation of residents, a Reuters witness said. Separately, the head of the self-declared Luhansk People's Republic, East Ukraine's second separatist-held region, also announced an evacuation of residents. People will start being bussed out of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic on Friday at 8 p.m. local time. About 1700 GMT, Interfax news agency cited a source as saying. But it's an unnamed source. A hot take off of this, and I think a lot of you guys see this and realize this. But I do think that there's a level of the media, possibly in tandem with the Brandon administration, trying to push this to make this happen, to distract, to have something to distract from the fact that there is a trucker convoy that's getting ready to move across the country to be there for the State of the Union, to distract from the fact that all these governors are starting to lift their mask mandates quietly without making any major news announcements about it, and the fact that the police have cracked down on what happened with Ottawa. There was a reason that I led with the Ottawa story, and not this, even though a lot of people would think that this would be the primary story off of this. Because I do think that the mainstream media is coordinating a little bit with this to try to distract from this. And I mean, the unnamed source, I don't know why this Reuters witness is here. I don't know who he is, what his business is. Even if I don't have his name, I'd like to know at least why he's there, what position he holds, and why I should believe him. Because I don't know why I should believe this source. But that's what we see from that. Let's grab another one here from our friends at NPR. Did you donate yet? Because you need to donate so they can continue to press out articles like this in support of communism. Because it's not your money, comrade. It's our money. A rebel in East Ukraine accused Kiev of planning an attack. The U.S. says he is lying. From Alex Leff. And remember, never printing reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what it is that they have to say. A Russian-backed separatist leader in eastern Ukraine announced an emergency evacuation to Russia, alleging that the Ukraine has built up its military presence for an offensive in that area. But analysis of the video message revealed it was pre-recorded 2 days earlier, and the U.S. government considered it part of a lying tactic to distract from a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine. In the video message posted on a messaging app on Friday, Denis Pushilin, the head of the Donetsk rebel, said, as of today, February 18th, a mass centralized departure of the population of Russian Federation has been organized. Pushilin alleged a Ukrainian buildup of forces and weaponry, including U.S.-provided advanced weapons like Javelin attack missiles and Stinger and anti-aircraft missiles, was the reason for the evacuation. The armed forces of the enemy are in combat formations and are ready for a forceful capture of Donbas. President of the Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, will soon issue a decree to the military to go on the offensive and implement a plan for the invasion of the territory, he said. Although the separatist leader said in the video it was Friday, NPR downloaded the video, posted to Pushilin's Telegram messaging app account, and verified, based on the metadata, that the filming date was Wednesday, raising further questions about the timing of the alleged offensive that he was warning about. The announcement came as the US and NATO allies pressured Russian President Vladimir Putin to pull his troops back from the Ukraine. Russia denies planning the invasion of the Ukraine and says it sent some of its troops back to the regular barracks, but the Biden admin believes Russia has massed between 169,000 and 190,000 military personnel near Ukraine and in Russia-occupied Crimea. So, I mean, some of the reality that goes with this as well is, again, we start to see various false flag attacks that are coming off of this, including the fact that this guy is saying that Kiev is planning to invade territory that's occupied by, for all intents and purposes, Russians. Because they're separatists, they want to break away from the Ukrainian government, and they actually want to become Russia. They're Russia sympathetic in that region. And I do believe that by the narrative that's being laid out, they want to take their territory with them and give it back over to Russia. Now, with that being said, what's actually happening over there, I don't know. And of course, the U.S. is going to say that Russia is lying off of this. They've built up this narrative that Russia can do no right over the past 6 years. That has been the forefront of the narrative. Like I tweeted out, I think Saturday, the 80s called, they want their foreign policy back. Because it is 24/7, wall to wall, Russia can do nothing right. Russia is wrong, Russia is wrong, Russia is wrong. And this is the narrative that's getting fed to our people. And Zelensky himself continues to say, no, there's no plans for invasion. Stop worrying, no plans for invasion. And if there is plan for invasion, we will deal with it when it comes. But when you prop up like this, This makes the invasion more innocent because it makes my capital look like juicy piece of chicken with butter inside of it, breaded and fried. But that's what we see coming off of that. Metadata shows pro-Russian separatists filmed evacuation video days earlier. This is follow-up to what we just watched, or what we just read. So this is saying track creation date, and they're saying 22/02/16, which again would have been Wednesday. Modified date 22/2/16, and both at 5:07:24 p.m. local time. So yes, the fact that he put this out on his Telegram on Friday doesn't mean the fact that this was actual news on Friday. Let's see, from CNBC, for Russia taking action on Ukraine now might be less costly than waiting, says analyst. From Abigail Ng. From Russia's point of view, it may be better to ramp up aggression on Ukraine instead of doing nothing, according to a senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. That's because if Russia backs down now, NATO will think that the arms exports to Ukraine were a key decisive step, and that more deterrence is needed, said Rob Lee of the FPRI's Eurasia program. Russia doesn't want NATO or Ukraine to believe that that's the case, he told CNBC's Squawk Box Asia on Monday. That's why I think the costs of inaction, from Russia's perspective, are probably greater than the costs of escalating right now. Additionally, Kiev has limited capacity when it comes to long-range missiles, but it's working to improve that. One reason that Russia might consider action now to be less costly than waiting is that if the Ukraine develops a long-range missile system, that means that any kind of Russian escalation in the future could lead to Ukraine strikes on Russian cities or significant military infrastructure deeper into Russia, Lee said. Ukraine doesn't have that option right now, and I think that's part of the cost-benefit analysis for them. And there you go, another American outlet telling Russia, now is the time! Strike now! Do it now! From the Hill. There's President Brandon. New satellite images by Maxar Technologies collected over the weekend show an apparent shift in Russia's military deployment around Ukraine as officials continue to warn about an impending invasion, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. Some smaller deployments are now visible, with several units shown to be on training grounds or outside the base. Most of the locations are in Russia's Belgorod area, which is 25 miles from Ukraine's border in western Russia. Images show the helicopter landing sites being established in the last 2 weeks. Do we have the images? Of course we don't. Other footage, including a TikTok video, showed Russian military deployment less than 5 miles from the Ukrainian border, according to the Times, a former newspaper. And the volume just drops off like that too, but I know that it looks like they've got the tag on there too of participating in activity that could result in you or others getting hurt. Jesus Christ, that's loud. Shut that up. But they're not going to show us the deployment. But that's what we see coming off of that. From CNN, let's talk about the Vice President Harris. So, one of the things that we talked about on Friday is the fact that Vice President Harris went over there to try to ease tensions between the U.S. and the Ukraine. And honestly, if they're looking for somebody to ease tensions, I think that they picked the right person, because Kamala Harris definitely knows a lot about that. But from CNN, Harris says that the U.S. stands with Ukraine while warning Russia of swift, severe, and united consequences. From Kate Sullivan, Allie Malloy, and Jasmine Wright. Video of the speech, video of the speech, video of the speech, of course not. Vice President Harris on Saturday vowed there would be swift, severe, and united response if Russia invades the Ukraine and assured Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that the U.S. stands with the Ukraine. In remarks at the Munich Security Conference in Germany, Harris laid out retaliatory measures in a manner befitting her past career as a prosecutor, promising significant and unprecedented economic costs. We will impose far-reaching financial sanctions and export controls. We will target Russia's financial institutions and key industries, and we will target those who are complicit and those who aid and abet this unprovoked invasion. Harris said when she took center stage at the security conference, which is taking place as the brewing conflict between Russia and Ukraine reaches a boiling point. The vice president continued, "Make no mistake, the imposition of these sweeping and coordinating measures will inflict great damage on those who must be held accountable." Harris then went on and talked directly to the Russian troops and said, "Do not come! Do not come!" In an interview with CNN's Christine Amanpour on Saturday after he met with Harris, Zelensky said that any of the sanctions on Russia should be made public before an invasion of Ukraine occurs. "We don't need your sanctions after the bombardment will happen and after our country will be fired at, or after we will have no borders, or after we have no economy. Why would we need these sanctions then?" he said. In their meeting in Munich, Harris told Zelensky that the U.S. takes seriously the importance of integrity and territorial integrity of the Ukraine and your sovereignty, and the United States stands with Ukraine in this regard. So, you take seriously the importance of the integrity and territorial integrity of the Ukraine, but you still can't visit the southern border. Harris's office said in a statement that Harris and Zelensky discussed the united transatlantic approach if Russia further invades the Ukraine, and the vice president outlined the swift and severe economic measurements that have been prepared alongside our allies and partners. So, there you go. We're gonna sanction. We're gonna sanction. I kind of want to listen to this, I'm not going to lie. Even though it's not going to mean anything, I kind of want to listen to this. See Biden's warning to Putin from the White House. If I hadn't read the caption, I probably would not.
The bottom line is this. The United States and our allies and partners will support the Ukrainian people. We will hold Russia accountable for its actions. The West is united and resolved. We're ready to impose severe sanctions on Russia if it further invades Ukraine. But I say again, Russia can still choose diplomacy. It is not too late to de-escalate and return to the negotiating table. Last night, Russia agreed that Secretary of State Blinken and Foreign Minister Lavrov should meet on February 24th in Europe. But if Russia takes military action before that date, we'll be clear that they have slammed the door shut on diplomacy. They will have chosen war, and they will pay a steep price for doing so, not only from the sanctions that we and our allies will impose on Russia, but the moral outrage the rest of the world will visit upon them. You know, there are many issues that divide our nation and our world, but standing up to Russian aggression is not one of them.
Hey, Biden, the 80s called. They want their foreign policy back. Oh, wait, that only works if you're talking about Mitt Romney. All right, let's grab one from Fox Business. Harris, Americans will incur some costs from the Ukraine crisis as energy costs and inflation soar. Probably the only true thing that she said in that speech. From Michael Lee. Vice President Harris warned that Americans could feel some costs of a Russian invasion, unwelcome news to many who are already bearing the costs of soaring inflation. When America stands for principles and all the things we hold dear, it requires sometimes for us to put ourselves out there in a way that maybe we will incur some costs, Harris said on Sunday after a meeting with NATO leaders in Germany. Harris said that some of the costs to hit American pocketbooks may relate to energy costs, with Russia being one of the world's leading producers of oil. Yeah. So, if this does go down and this does actually happen, $4 to $5 a gallon, just so you know. And by the way, that goes off to $6 and $7 a gallon diesel fuel, which is what is used to transport your goods across the country. And some of that is going to come with an increased price tag once it gets out to the shelf. Because $4 to $5 a gallon is a very, very heavy price to bear when we go along with that. The Vice President's comments come as Americans have already seen prices on common goods rise thanks to a 4-decade high in inflation. According to the Consumer Price Index, those price increases have been spread across almost all common goods, including medical care, clothing, transportation, food, and shelter. But Harris stressed the need to push back against Russia's plans for invasion, saying that there was a real possibility of war in Europe not seen since the end of World War II. So, honestly, one of the things that I think that you should pay attention to, you probably should be putting a little bit of money into the savings if you can, because, and I'm not saying everybody's going to be in the position to do this either, but you probably should if you can, because what you've seen over the last year is only going to get worse. From the Daily Wire. Harris claims that sanctions could deter Putin from invading, despite claiming he's already made up his mind. From Daily Wire News. Apparently that tweet is no longer there. That has the video with it. Because there's supposed to be... There it is. I was going to say. We have video of this one. Vice President Harris claimed on Sunday that sanctions that the Biden admin is considering imposing on Russia if it invades Ukraine, which critics have said amount to little more than a slap on the wrist, could deter Russia, despite claiming Sunday that Putin has already made his decision. If you believe Putin has made up his mind, what leverage do you really have? A reporter asked. Why not put these sanctions in place now? To which Harris probably was on the cusp of saying, That sounds like some Republican talk. Do you want the world to believe that you're a Republican out there? The purpose of these sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence. Why don't we just listen to her? Why am I trying to do this voice once again? And there she is on the mask too, by the way. That's funny. Let's listen.
But if you believe Putin has made up his mind, what leverage do you really have? Why not put those sanctions in place now?
The purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence. But let's also recognize the unique nature of the sanctions that we have outlined. These are some of the greatest sanctions, if not the strongest, that we've ever issued. As I articulated yesterday, it is directed at institutions, in particular financial institutions, and individuals, and it will exact absolute harm for the Russian economy and their government.
But if Putin has made up his mind, do you feel that this threat that has been looming is really going to deter him?
Absolutely. We strongly believe. And remember also that the sanctions are a product not only of our perspective as the United States, but a shared perspective among our allies. And the allied relationship is such that we have agreed that the deterrence effect of these sanctions is still a meaningful one, especially because, remember also, we still sincerely hope that there is a diplomatic path out of this moment. And within the context then of the fact that that window is still although it is absolutely narrowing, but within the context of a diplomatic path still being open, the deterrence effect, we believe, has merit.
Basically, I don't know. That's what she has to say. I don't know. He's made his decision, but we might still be able to stop him by threatening sanctions. But everybody should be worried about him because he's going to go out and start World War III. And I bet you at some point down here they're going to say that this is because the rubes in the U.S. elected Donald Trump. Let's keep going. From Newsweek, is the Durham filing the smoking gun that undoes Hillary Clinton? No, it is not. But nice try. Let's read on here. Shifting gears here, talking about the documents gate. From Alexandra Hutzler. Donald Trump and right-wing figures are pointing to a new court filing from Special Counsel Durham as proof that Hillary Clinton spied on the former president. We all know that. We knew that before the Durham report. The 13-page document from Durham tasked the former Attorney General Bill Barr to investigate the origins of the FBI's probe into the Trump 2016 campaign and its connections with Russia sparked a firestorm on the right after its release on Friday. Trump called it worse than Watergate. Okay, this is the worst. It's worse, and I know what it's like to be worse than Watergate. Okay, and this is absolutely worse than Watergate. Hillary Clinton, worst presidential candidate in history. Okay. But legal analysts have told Newsweek that the document isn't the damning evidence conservatives are touting it to be. No, it is. It absolutely is. But the problem is that Hillary Clinton has political clout and a lot of money, and also the fact that once you start turning around and going after your political enemies with the powers that you have, it starts to look like a political witch hunt, which is what this is going to turn out and be reported as from outlets like Newsweek. It's not the smoking gun that folks are saying that it is, says Nima Rahmani, a former federal persecutor and president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers. Or as Nick Ackerman, a former Watergate prosecutor, put it, it's absolutely nonsense. The filing is centered on Michael Sussman, a lawyer with ties to the Clinton campaign. Sussman has been charged with a single count of lying to the FBI in 2016 when presenting it with documents that allegedly showed secret communications between the Trump campaign and a Russian bank. Durham said Sussman falsely said he wasn't working for any client at the time. Sussman had disputed Durham's account and pleaded not guilty. The pretrial motion is filed Friday as the court's still looking at potential conflicts of interest with Sussman's defense counsel, Latham & Watkins, LLP. The document also detailed a 2017 meeting which Sussman presented a federal agency with suspicious internet data, purported to show Russian-made cell phones being used near the White House complex and Trump Tower. Yes, this absolutely is a smoking gun, and if this was anybody except for Hillary Clinton, then this would be over and shut, and that person would be in prison. And, I mean, for now, I can't believe that Michael Sussman himself hasn't come into a very deep state of depression and decided that his life wasn't worth living. Honk, honk. Because I feel like that's going to be coming here in the near future. But Hillary Clinton herself got into this as well. Hillary Clinton finally breaks silence, calls John Durham claims a fake scandal. After numerous press-tested and focus group-tested ideas have come out, and several writers wrote her speech for her to make sure that she didn't say something out of emotion. From Mark Moore. By the way, they are probably going to run her in 2024. If anyone knows scandals, it's Hillary Clinton. The former First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, and two-time Democratic presidential candidate finally responded Wednesday to last week's court filing by Special Counsel John Durham alleging that her 2016 presidential campaign paid for computer research to link then-candidate Trump to Russia. Trump and Fox are desperately spinning up a fake scandal to distract from his real ones, Clinton said on Twitter. So it's a day that ends in Y. The more his misdeeds are exposed, the more they lie. For those interested in reality, here's a good debunking of their latest nonsense, she concluded the post, attaching a link to Vanity Fair article, because that's objective, titled, "You'll Never Believe It, but Hillary Clinton did not, in fact, spy on the Trump White House." Yes, Vanity Fair, the most objective name in news. Clinton broke her silence one day after she ignored questions from the Post about Durham's claims after she and her daughter Chelsea were at a Queens restaurant, of course, because she didn't have the pre-written and focus group tested speech in front of her at the time. Durham filed the court papers on Friday in which he alleged that a Clinton campaign lawyer enlisted a tech executive to help mine internet data from locations including Trump Tower and the White House to establish an interference and a narrative tying then-candidate Trump to Russia. The documents filed by Durham, who was appointed special counsel by then-Attorney General William Barr in May of 2019, have ignited a firestorm of criticism against the Clinton campaign and led to calls for a closer look at the FBI's handling of the Russia probe, which was codenamed Crossfire Hurricane. And yeah, this is probably one of the biggest scandals. If it had just been campaign Trump during Trump Tower, it would have just been Oppo research. Not very, very good Oppo research and Oppo research that had questionable morality, but it would have been, for the most part, Oppo research. But the fact that Hillary Clinton hired somebody to spy on the White House. If you land a helicopter, a small one-man helicopter on the White House lawn, you are never ever seen again. But this person go up and set a spy on the White House and the internal communications of it? No, I don't fucking think so. But there again, nothing is ever going to happen to Clinton. It's not. But they're going to continue to come back out and try to talk about it here. Let's grab one from the Dissociated Press. On the other side of it, because Clinton and Trump have to be fighting again. Neither one of them should be in the public eye right now, but they have to be fighting again. But we might have to refresh this one, because it doesn't appear to be loading. Let's throw a refresh on this. See what it does. Are we having internet issues? Or is the AP having internet issues? It might be the AP. Or it might be my performance monitor too, because I know we're at 86% memory right now. There it goes. From the Dissociated Press. National Archives. Trump took classified items to Mar-a-Lago. From Farnoosh Amiri. Classified information was found in the 15 boxes of the White House records that were stored at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. The National Archives and Records Administration said Friday in a letter that confirmed the letter has been sent to the Justice Department. A letter from the agency follows numerous reports that Trump's handling of sensitive and even classified information during his time as president, and after he left the White House, the revelation could also interest federal investigators responsible for policing the handling of government secrets, though the Justice Department and FBI have not indicated they will pursue. Federal law bars the removal of classified documents to unauthorized locations, though it is possible that Trump could try to argue that, as president, he was the ultimate declassification authority. No matter the legal risk, it exposes him to charges of hypocrisy given his relentless attacks during the 2016 presidential campaign on the Democratic opponent Hillary Clinton for her use of a private email server as the Secretary of State. The FBI investigated but ultimately did not recommend charges. Trump recently denied reports about his admin's tenuous relationship with the National Archives, and his lawyers said they're continuing to search for additional presidential records that belong to the National Archives. So, my first question is, how did these get out of the National Archives if they were classified and not allowed to be disseminated out? Because, to my understanding, the National Archives had to sign off on all of these documents in order for them to leave the National Archives, and yet here we are having this conversation as to why the president was just able to put them in a box and take them back out of there. Well, somebody had to sign them out of the National Archives. Number two, these are copies of documents. These are not the actual documents themselves. The actual full documents the originals, are still stored at the National Archives. So a lot of this just comes down to whether or not this is the possession of state secrets by a private citizen. Oh, but wait. The President of the United States has security clearance for the rest of his life after his presidency ends. So yes, he has the security clearance to have them. How they were stored can come into question, of course, and we can have that conversation about that. There is no criminality to this right now. As much as the Associated Press and MSDNC and CNN, CIANN want you to believe that there's criminality to this, there's no criminality to this. There is the speak of hypocrisy, and I would really like to see how these documents were stored when they came off of there, but there is no criminality to this. This is a nothing. We can argue the hypocrisy, but that's it. But we also have to consider the fact that these documents were taken from the White House to a resort at which will constantly, for the rest of time, well, for the rest of the president's life, former president's life, be under a Secret Service guard. So it's not going to be like somebody can just walk in there, some spy, and go and take state secrets either. This is absolutely a nothing. Especially having them as hard copies. Now, having them disseminated in an unsecured server as digital copies, that's a different story entirely. And also, the Secretary of State does not enjoy classification and top secret clearance for the rest of her life, as the former president does. This is a giant nothing. I mean, it's something to be actually look at and ask about, but as far as criminality, it's a 0 out of 10. And as far as hypocrisy, it's probably like a 4 out of 10. Let's talk about inflation. Let's start by listening to Representative Debbie Stabenow, Senator Stabenow of Michigan, saying that the GOP has failed to offer solutions to inflation. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Thank you. You know, this last year, it really was a headline of Democrats deliver, but there's more to do, and that's what we're focused on for the coming year as it relates to the costs that families are feeling every single day. And there's no question that our country still faces supply chain challenges. I certainly from Michigan can speak about that and what that means, and everything that we buy in terms of cars and appliances and every part of the economy, and we are laser focused on addressing that, and the increased costs due to COVID. And over again, when we look at what has happened when you shut the economy down in the United States and globally, the ripple effect is in every part of our lives. And so we have been laser focused and will continue to be laser focused in addressing that. And Republicans have done nothing to lower costs. They have proposed nothing to lower costs. We've worked with President Biden to pass the American Rescue Plan that put shots in people's arms, to create safety for them, for their family, to get kids back in school. When the president took office, there were 46% of the children in America in school. Now it's 98%. That's a big difference, and we understand the challenges families still face under COVID, but it's safer. Children are back and learning in the classroom. And we've gotten our economy moving in the fastest, strongest way since 1984. It is amazing, the underlying strength, even when we've seen costs go up.
Okay, so your economy is not even back to where it was in 2019, just so you know. Yes, you have had impressive jobs numbers, for sure. You've had months with impressive numbers. I will grant that. But they're all the jobs that were there before. And you haven't even filled all those yet. They're all people that are going back to work. It's not creating new jobs where people can go back and move their way up. It's people going back there to try to get their old jobs back without any form of upward mobility. Now, with the inflated dollar, people are getting 70% of what they were making before once you adjust for inflation back, at least. But, I mean, you've done that at least, and some of us haven't even enjoyed that. I'm still making the same rate that I was in 2018. Republicans have done nothing to lower costs. They haven't stood in the way of our agenda. They haven't proposed ideas that we would like. They haven't brought a bill down to the floor for us to shut down. That's what I'm hearing off of this. Yes, they have done nothing. In a government where we have control of all three of the major levers of government, they have done nothing to try to lower costs. And yet, they still have, because they've stopped some of the biggest and most painful parts of your agenda. I wish they could have stopped more. But they've stopped some of the most inflationary parts of the agenda, along with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Yeah, they've done stuff to lower costs. But no, just keep spending money, Debbie Stamina. Alright, what else do we have? From Reuters. I gotta archive this one. I've been trying to get this article for a week and I haven't archived it. What the fuck? What is wrong with me? Alright, we will mark that for tomorrow. Let's grab one then from, where are we at? Why are we all the way back here? We're supposed to be down here. From ABC, Justice Department to take on an exploitation of supply chain issues. From Michael Balsamo of the Associated Press. The Justice Department is launching a new initiative aimed at identifying companies that exploit supply chain disruptions in the U.S. to make increased profits in the violation of federal antitrust laws. The program being unveiled Thursday by the Justice Department's Antitrust Division and the FBI comes amid an ongoing supply chain struggle and labor shortages in the U.S. that have plagued retailers since the coronavirus pandemic began. Well, the first thing that I've got to say is you better point your investigation in on the United States government while you're doing this here, because they are probably one of the biggest contributors to this, because you know, you've got to trust here when the biggest business in the country, the government, turns around and tells its big business buddies like the Waltons and Jeff Bezos, yeah, no, we'll shut this down, but don't worry, we'll make sure that your big box store can stay open, because, you know, people still got to eat, but they just can't go down to the mom and pop store because they might stand too close together. Well, don't worry, we'll get your competition out of the way for you. Don't worry about that. Justice Department lawyers worry that the companies may seek to exploit supply chain disruptions for their own illicit gain, the department said, and then turn around and donate that money back to Democrats. Oops, did I say that out loud? And if that's the case, the Justice Department and the FBI will persecute antitrust violations they uncover, the department says. How does the DOJ persecute itself? These violations could include agreements between individuals and businesses to fix prices or wages, or to rig bids, persecutors say. Well, you know what would help keep them from fixing prices? If their competitors weren't shut down and had businesses that were allowed to stay open during the pandemic. Because you know what keeps prices down? Competition. I wonder, is Ron in the chat right now? Because we got to read one from his favorite publication, from his favorite politician. From Bloomberg, Morgan Stanley, relationships on Wall Street, snared in a probe. From Sridhar Natarajan, Gillian Tan, and Hema Parmar. Ever since his arrival after university in 2004, Pawan Pasi has worked the phones inside Morgan Stanley, rising to become the chief communicator with investors, buying and selling big blocks of a stock, a business the bank dominates on Wall Street. Then in November, his chair suddenly went empty at Morgan Stanley headquarters overlooking Times Square, and the whispers began spreading. The bank had put Pasi on leave. The feds were poking around. Indeed, Morgan Stanley and Posse are intertwined in a sprawling U.S. probe into whether banks are improperly tipping off investors to stock sales large enough to send prices swinging. According to people with knowledge of the inquiries, block trading is one of the few Wall Street businesses where relationships still drive the flow of deals. And now the ties spanning a wide range of firms are getting picked apart by investigators. No one has been accused of wrongdoing. The equity capital trading universe is one of the last realms of super high-end wining and dining, worlds in finance, said James Koutoulas, Chief Executive Officer of Typhon Capital Management, noting he has misgivings about the deals that can result. Posse's frequent phone contacts and some of Morgan Stanley's key clients are among a roster of more than a dozen executives at other investment firms and banks whose communications are being scooped up by the Justice Department for scrutiny. According to people with knowledge of the matter, in some cases, authorities are seeking access to online chats, mobile phone, texts, emails, and messages sent by apps, people said, asking not to be named, discussing the confidential demands. And essentially, what this is telling me when I look into an article like this is the fact that the AMC people were right, and it's people like Posse here and others on Wall Street who wanted to be able to manipulate the trades to short sell and short squeeze stocks like AMC and GameStop. This is the exact kind of behavior that drove the Reddit stock surge. The meme stocks, as they said, because nobody could seriously be considering these kinds of stocks. Why would they ever consider something like this? Nobody ever would be considering something like this, they said. They tried to tell us at the time. And realistically, people were considering it. People were deciding and trying to figure out how to come back and not necessarily make a big buck, but some of them did make out like bandits, but to actually shut these companies down. When they borrow stock and then sell it at a gain, or at a loss rather, and make millions of dollars back and then return it. That's what these people were talking about with this. So I don't know if there's going to be any criminality to this yet. The DOJ is still looking into this, but this is the exact kind of behavior that they were trying to tell you was happening. And the mainstream media told you that wasn't happening. Just stop worrying about this. Well, the DOJ is involved in it now. Let's grab one from a local source. We still have a lot to go, and it's getting close to 10. Let's talk about Quintez Brown. Quintez Brown, charged with attempted murder of Louisville mayoral candidate, leaves jail after fund pays his bail. From NBC News. The man accused of attempting to murder Louisville mayoral candidate Craig Greenberg Monday was released from jail after a local bail fund paid his bail. Quintez was ushered out of the Hall of Justice as fast as the group surrounding him could move. On the way to the doors, the 21-year-old lost his jail-issued shoe, then after taking both shoes off, he walked in just his socks and the ankle monitor, going home with him as he got into his ride away from the jail. What happens next when he gets home? Well, I'm sure that BLM will pry the ankle monitor off of him, and he'll be freed. But what happens when he gets home? BLM Louisville organizer Chanel Helm says 4 mental health agencies reached out to her and offered services to help Brown after catching wind that the Louisville Community Bail Fund would be posting his $100,000 bail. We're under the understanding that the jail does not have those resources, Helm said. What the bail fund does is move ourselves as community members and professionals and make sure people get those resources they deserve. Helm says she believes Brown had no chance at that while sitting behind bars. What all of us are asking is that the mental health happens, and that was denied at court. They are waiting court services. They don't have those resources, so we went ahead and got it for him, Helm said. So this guy, who went in and shot at and attempted to murder a political rival on top of it, is now out on a $100,000 bail that was set up by the Louisville Bail Fund, which probably had something to do with being set up for Breonna Taylor riots. Most likely. Chuck Ross on Twitter points out, the activist who paid the bail, Chanel Helm, was the woman who called for Mitch McConnell to be stabbed in the heart during a protest outside of his home in 2019. I remember that, by the way. Helm was on the payroll of the Kentucky Democratic Party at the time. So, he is out. And the Kentucky lawmakers are not happy about this. Kentucky lawmaker wants to crack down on bail groups after KTZed Brown's release. From Mark Vanderhoff and WLKY Digital Team. A Kentucky state lawmaker says he wants to crack down on bail groups after one of them posted bond for a man accused of a shooting at a Louisville mayoral candidate. The Louisville Community Bail Fund, a project of Black Lives Matter of Louisville, posted a $100,000 full cash bail on Wednesday for 21-year-old KTZed Brown. Brown was charged with attempted murder after firing upon Democratic mayoral candidate Craig Greenberg. State lawmaker Jason Neems has already filed House Bill 313 to outlaw such bail groups. He now says he will change his bill to regulate them more tightly and prevent them from posting bonds for certain offenses or dollar amounts. They would also be required to disclose their donors and who they post bond for. Those are both good ideas, by the way. Because I'd like to see who's donating to this particular fund. That's more detail into this, but yeah, I mean, we need to look at. Now, I don't mind crowdfunding a bail. I don't think that's a problem at all. But the fact that this is being this is not, especially with BLM being a corporate organizer. This is not just a few people down the street saying, "Hey, Jim got put in jail. They say he needs $300 to get out. Maud, you got $50. That's not this. This is the fact that this is A, so high profile, and B, the fact that this is actually somebody who was organized with BLM. A, first and foremost, this is a conflict of interest. I would think coming back up out of this, but I think this causes bigger problems down the road because if you've got these bail funds, you know, you set bail at a certain amount. Because you don't want a person to become a flight risk, a risk for somebody who's going to go and take off into the wild. To be able to get out, pry his ankle monitor off, and go disappear into the woodwork and never come back for his trial date again. Come back with a different name, different face, and a little bit of plastic surgery up on him, and you never see a guy like that again. They're set up for, and they're set on a sliding scale for people who have resources, but the crowdfunding aspect of it, especially when it's going through a major corporate, I mean, $100,000 bail for a 21-year-old college student who writes occasionally for the Courier, under normal circumstances, that would actually probably be a reasonable amount of bail. But my fear is, especially with this bail fund, that judges are going to have to continue to raise bails higher and higher in order to overcome what is coming out of the freedom funds or the bail funds like this. And it's not going to affect the high-profile people because they'll just continue to raise money through BLM. They'll come in and say, this person was wronged by the police. Let's bail him out. In spite of the fact that he attempted to kill somebody or tried to burn down a liquor store with somebody inside. And the people who aren't high political targets, who actually do need a bailout at some point, their bail is going to be so untenable. A guy gets caught... A 19-year-old gets caught shoplifting, and it winds up happening to be a fairly large amount. Like, he tries to put a Nintendo Switch in his jacket, he gets out. Big enough that they're actually going to pay attention and do something off of it. Retail theft. He gets picked up, he has to sit in jail for a little while until he gets bailed. And now, over a $300 Nintendo Switch, he now sees a $700,000 bail. Because they might raise his money off the Freedom Fund. This is only going to hurt the little people. It seriously is. So yeah, I think that the lawmakers are right to do this, and they should be doing this across the country. All right, from the New York Post. Joy Behar will wear a face mask indefinitely. It's not safe, in spite of the fact that over the weekend she was caught without a mask on. From Andrew Court. The View's most vocal co-host is remaining muzzled. Joy Behar says she's going to wear a face mask in public spaces indefinitely, even after health officials say it's safe to take them off. The liberal 79-year-old commentator made the claim on the ABC Chat show Thursday during a segment discussing how the CDC will likely ease its guidance on mask wearing in the near future. Personally, I listen to the little voice in my head that doesn't really follow 100% what they tell me because they keep changing it, Behar said. Oh, yeah, no, now because now it's going in a favor where you can come back out and, make a virtue signal out of it. Now you don't listen to everything that they say, but 7 months ago, it was just trust the science. We just have to do what it is that they say. So go and get your vaccine. Otherwise, you're a racist bigot. But if she wants to wear a mask that completely muffles out everything that she has to say, I would be in support of that, absolutely. From The Blaze, give that a second to catch back up. Maybe. There we go. Brian Stelter predicts a legal mess for CNN. Holy shit, Brian Stelter said something that was true. From Samuel Mangold Lennet. Brian Stelter, host of CIANN's Unreliable Sources, said Sunday that the recent resignations of CNN President Jeff Zucker and Alison Gallust, the former marketing chief for CNN, was a legal mess for CNN, Fox News reported. Stelter said, I was told by a source, an unnamed source, that Zucker can't comment further on the substance of why he left, and he did, of why he left, why he did, and what happened. He added, everyone is lawyered up. Chris Cuomo might sue Cuomo's lawyer. Apparently wants tens of millions of dollars out of the network, so this is now a legal mess for CNN. Yeah, it is. The most trusted name in news. Caught up in yet another reality show. That's all I have to say about that one. From NBC4, out of New York. Dangerous bird flu found in flock at Long Island home, prompting major response. So here's the next authoritarian crackdown for you. A dangerous strain of bird flu has been discovered in a private flock of birds at a Long Island home, prompting an urgent state and federal response to contain the contagious disease. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the New York State Department of Agriculture on Saturday confirmed the positive test for the highly pathogenic avian influenza in what they described as a small, non-commercial backyard flock of 8 then non-poultry birds in Suffolk County. Oh, I bet you they're poultry birds if you're hungry enough. State officials quarantined the affected premises, and birds on the properties will be depopulated. To prevent the spread of the disease, birds from the flock will not enter the food system. The USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services said in a statement, if they're non-poultry birds, what are you afraid of? They weren't intended to enter the food population. The state and federal authorities also said they would launch a major biosecurity response with testing and surveillance in surrounding areas. The disease is described as highly contagious and often fatal for chickens. Human infections with bird flu are rare and usually accompanied by prolonged exposure to sick or dead birds, according to the CDC, but are most fatal when they do happen. Here is your next major authoritarian crackdown right here. Get out of the cities. Get out of New York. I realize Long Island isn't technically New York proper, but still. So this one came to me in the Discord, and I want to just talk a little bit about this. I know we're up on the clock, and we do want to go and watch Stephen Ignoramus, because we like Stephen Ignoramus around here. He's a good dude. Let's grab this one from KTLA. California bill would allow citizens to enforce assault weapons ban. Golden Leaf brought this to us in the Discord, and I wanted to talk just a bit about this here from the Associated Press. And we all know what's going on with this and where this happens. This is actually pretty old news. California Governor Gavin Newsom proposed Friday letting private citizens in the state sue gun makers to stop them from selling assault weapons, just as Texas lets its residents sue abortion providers to stop the procedures, then essentially dared the U.S. Supreme Court to treat both issues the same. They can't because they're entirely different. At a news conference in the coastal town of Del Mar, north of San Diego, Newsom said he thought the Texas law was wrong and the Supreme Court's decision in December to let it stay in effect while it's appealed was absurd and outrageous. But they opened the door, they set the tone, tenor, and rules, and either we can be on the defensive, man, complaining about it, or we can play by those rules. We're gonna play by those rules, bro, Newsom said. He later added, we'll see how principled the U.S. Supreme Court really is, bro. Because Newsom's a surfer dude. The unique Texas law approved last year bans all abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected, usually around the 6th week of pregnancy. The law does not let the government enforce it. Instead, private citizens can sue abortion providers or anyone who aids and abets the procedure, which I do believe is wrong. I think that it should be an aggrieved party. Not just anybody down the street who wants to make a quick 10 grand. It should always be an aggrieved party. So, there are a couple different things that go along with this, and this bill in the California legislature unveiled on Friday would do the same thing, but instead of abortion providers, it would let people sue gun makers and others who sell, make, or distribute assault-style guns in the state, which are, by the way, illegal to sell in the state. So that's my first problem with this. While the Texas legislature, because of the precedent of Roe versus Wade, cannot make a direct law banning, outlawing abortion, saying that we will put you in prison if you go and get one, they are allowing citizens to go back up and recoup losses as an aggrieved party, or just anybody else down the road. Again, I have my disagreements with the way the Texas law is written. I have major disagreements with the way the Texas law is written. But you also still have to have a friendly judge who will come back and take up the case. We're not going to debate the Texas law, except to come back out and tell you the fact that with the Texas law, you also, it's taking place, you're filing a lawsuit against somebody who lives in the state for a procedure that happened in state to a doctor who practices in state, or people who aided and abetted in state. Everything that is happening here happens in state. Now, I don't know if there are actual gun manufacturers in California. I would assume with as big as the state is and as nice as the weather is, there probably are. And if you are a gun manufacturer in the state of California, I'm sorry to say, but you deserve what's coming to you, because the writing's been on the wall for 30 fucking years at this point. More than that. The writing's been on the wall forever as to what is going to happen in California. And how they feel about gun manufacturers. But, I mean, think of the other companies that make the assault-style weapon. Who makes the AR? Colt. Well, several different companies make the AR platform, but the original actual AR-15 is a Colt. And once you go out and start suing the gun manufacturers, you're starting to cross state lines. And now you have to start getting district and the Supreme Courts involved in this, which is not going to go well for California. It's a unique idea. I like to have the conversation, but these are two completely different situations. For Gavin Newsom to come out and say, I dare the Supreme Court to treat this the same. You can't, because they're completely different. They're 100% completely different. And you know that. But you're trying to virtue signal. All right, let's finish up here. A little bit of a boo for Elon Musk. Elon Musk deletes tweets that compared Justin Trudeau to Hitler. Elon Musk then deleted a satirical meme on Twitter that compared the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to Adolf Hitler. The Tesla CEO was responding to a Twitter post by the trade publication CoinDesk, which reported that Canadian government was cracking down on crypto transactions aimed at helping the truckers protesting the vaccine mandates. Stop comparing me to Justin Trudeau! The meme featuring the likeness of Hitler read. At the bottom it said, I had the budget! Nice. I like that. The tweet, which Musk deleted about 12 hours after he posted it, was criticized by other Twitter users, one of whom wrote, "This is extremely poor taste, not a good look at all. There's a better way to make an argument." There's 10 people in the chat right now. 0 in the chat if it was in poor taste, 1 in the chat if it was in good taste. Because I think that it was in pretty good taste, actually. The American Jewish Committee issued a statement condemning Musk's tweet because, of course, they did. Once again, Elon has exercised extremely poor judgment by invoking Hitler to make a point on social media. Now, let's take some time and make sure that we post this picture of Donald Trump in a Hitler outfit and a Hitler mustache. He must stop this unacceptable behavior, the AGC said. Musk may believe posting a meme comparing Justin Trudeau to a genocidal dictator who exterminated millions is an appropriate way to criticize policies he disagrees with. It is not, it never is, unless that person happens to be evil and orange and evil. I will point out. There is the meme. Now that you've seen the meme, 1 in the chat if it's in good taste, 0 in the chat if it's in bad taste. Suppose I should vote too, huh? But that's what we see coming out of that. Let's grab another one from the Daily Mail. Let's talk about Maxwell. By the way, with all the Ukraine stuff and everything else, this story should have been all the way over here. But between Ottawa and the Ukraine, here we are. Seen a lot of ones here. Jeffrey Epstein's pimp, Jean-Luc Brunel, hangs himself alone in a Paris jail with no CCTV. Maxwell's family, shocked and scared for her as a man who procured 1,000 women for the pedophile financier, dies days after Andrew Deal. From Peter Allen and Emma Scully for Mail Online. Ghislaine Maxwell's family have said they're scared for her safety. Easy, A-Gains. I can still see it, but yeah, the Nightbot didn't. The Nightbot didn't like that one. Sorry. Ghislaine Maxwell's family have said they're scared for her safety after Epstein's French modeling agent, friend Jean-Luc Brunel, who allegedly procured more than 1,000 women and girls for the pedophile financier to sleep with, died today in an alleged prison suicide. Persecutors in Paris confirmed Brunel, who is not believed to have been on suicide watch, was found hanging in his cell in La Santé in the south in the capital city in the early hours of Saturday morning. It comes days after Prince Andrew agreed to settle with Virginia Roberts' lawsuit, accusing him of sex abuse after they met allegedly through Epstein and Maxwell. In the settlement, there was no admission of liability by Andrew, who was always denied the specific allegations. Roberts accused Brunel, 76, of procuring more than 1,000 women and girls for Epstein to sleep with, and was awaiting trial in France for raping minors. Following Brunel's death, Maxwell's family described the news as shocking and said that they're scared for Maxwell's safety at the Metro Detention Center in Brooklyn, where she is currently being held. Speaking at his home in London, Maxwell's brother Ian told the New York Post, "Another death by hanging in a high-security prison. My reaction is one of total shock and bewilderment." I'm not shocked. Mr. Maxwell claimed that despite her that's probably Miss Maxwell. Miss Maxwell claimed that despite her psychiatrist advising to the contrary, his sister... Oh no, that is Mr. Maxwell. His sister was deemed a suicide risk, and she is woken up every 15 minutes in the night. He described it as a complete violation of prisoner rights and human rights, insisting that Maxwell is not suicidal. He added that it was ironic that his sister was on suicide watch in prison, but Epstein and Brunel were not. Epstein was at one point, but didn't stay on it. Totally. Not on suicide watch. The CCTV is broken. The guards are just happen to be missing. And this guy manages to come back out and tie up the rope. Here's one for you guys. Hello, base department. From the Washington Post, Marine charged in January 6 riot is arrested in New York for selling forged vaccine cards to unvaccinated, including other military members. Based? Hello, base department. Yes. Yes, okay, you did see that. Awesome, thank you. From Shayna Jacobs. A Marine reservist already facing charges over alleged participation in the January 6th Selfie Fest at the Capitol was arrested Thursday on charges he acquired coronavirus vaccination cards to be sold to unvaccinated customers, including other service members, according to federal prosecutors. Jia Lu, 26, was indicted on charges including conspiracy to defraud the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and conspiracy to commit forgery. A medical clinic nurse who allegedly worked with him was also charged. The pair allegedly distributed cards to at least 300 people who did not get vaccinated but who wanted proof that they had. They also are accused of making more than 70 false entries in immunization databases. As part of the alleged scam, nurse Steven Rodriguez, 27, saw patients who came to the clinic for vaccination appointments but didn't actually get shots. Rodriguez allegedly wasted doses of the life-saving treatment by disposing of vials of the vaccine that would have been used had the shots been administered, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. Officials said Lou and Rodriguez, who live in Queens and Long Island, respectively, put countless people in danger by giving real CDs. Oh, Jesus Christ. Countless people in danger by letting people be free to do what they want and giving them tools to be free to do what they want and put what they want in their own body. Give me a fucking break. Jeez. But this guy seems pretty based in and of itself, so... And that's, that's where I said, too. With the forged vaccine cards, like I said at the beginning, it is a crime. Apparently it's defrauding. I don't know why that would be defrauding, but it is a crime to use the Health and Human Service, or I'm sorry, the CDC logo, because it is an official government property. It is a crime to forge on a vaccine card. It is against the law because you're using an official government logo to spread false information, like CNN does all the time, but they don't get popped for it. And what have I told you from the beginning? If you want to use the card stock and make your own little card, you definitely should not ever alter the logo just a little bit so it's legally distinguishable from the CDC logo and make your little card for that. You should never ever do that because that would be wrong. It would be a crime, but it would be wrong. So you shouldn't do that because it's morally incorrect for you to do something like that. Absolutely no, you should never ever do something like that. That would be completely illegal. Oh, this one was funny because there was a tweet that went with this, and I didn't put it up here. St. Paul City Council mulling end to mayor's emergency declaration, in which the leftoids out there are coming out saying, "No! No! Don't end the mandates! You'll kill people!" Well, you can still wear your mask. You can still get 17,000 boosters if you want to. After operating in a state of emergency for nearly 2 years, some members of the St. Paul City Council say they're preparing to sunset the pandemic declaration that gives Mayor Melvin Carter the authority to unilaterally enact certain regulations. After unanimously voting February 9th to extend Carter's emergency declaration until March 13th, the council is considering plans to transition back to St. Paul's regular governance model. Such a move would end the emergency executive orders the mayor issued to rapidly respond to the bingo pox pandemic. This is becoming less of a brand new situation and more of a new normal that we're all dealing with, Councilmember Rebecca Nacker said. Emergency orders are just that. They're for periods of emergency. They also detract from our democratic way of making decisions because they take power away from our legislative body, the council, where we have the ability to hear from constituents, we have the ability to deliberate on ideas, and we have the ability to formulate policy that responds. And a story like this is all the way at the bottom of a live stream that has been currently going on for 2 hours and 25 minutes so far. This is at the bottom of the stack right now because we have major news stories about the Ukraine and the trucker convoy to talk about. So we don't have time to talk about the fact that this one major city out here ended its COVID mandate. It was Democratic run. Oh, we'll hide that story on page 6. This one comes to us from CBS. Judge temporarily blocks release of Bob Saget's autopsy records. Nothing to see here. A judge in Florida on Wednesday agreed with the request from the family of comedian Bob Saget and temporarily prohibited the release of any photos, videos, or other records related to the investigation into his death, saying that he was doing so would cause them irreparable harm. Saget's wife, Kelly Rizzo, and his 3 daughters filed a lawsuit the previous day in Orlando, asking the state judge for a ruling that would prohibit the release of any records from the local medical examiner's office and the Orange County Sheriff's Office involving the probe into Saget's death. Circuit Judge Vincent Chu issued the temporary injunction, saying that Saget's family would suffer severe mental pain, anguish, and emotional distress if the request was granted. He said the injunction was in the public's interest as he decides whether the family's privacy concerns outweigh any claims for the records to be released. Now, under normal circumstances, I would say that no, they should respect the family off of this, but they were very quick to come back out and say, no, it was just a head trauma, don't look any further off of this. And the family sued to have this back out here. Now, under any normal circumstances, this would just be out there in the public record, and we would come back out and look at it and say it's the other thing, and especially if it didn't show anything. If it didn't show anything suspicious. But the fact that the family sued so quickly to get this blocked out so that we couldn't see it, after the medical examiner came out and said, no, it was just head trauma, stop it. I think the family knows something, and they don't really want us to know it either. So I have way more questions. I have a lot more questions. I have many more questions. But I fear that most of them are never going to be answered. Let's grab one from ABC. Mexico says conspiracy behind avocado ban. U.S. cites violence. From Mark Stevenson of the Associated Press. Mexico's president said Monday that the U.S. suspension on avocado imports and recent environmental complaints are part of a conspiracy against his country by political or economic interests. Do you think that this guy should get interviewed by Stephen Ignoramus when we're talking about conspiracy here? President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador put forward the conspiracy theory after the U.S. suspended imports of Mexican avocados on the eve of the Super Bowl following a threat against the U.S. plant safety inspector in Mexico. In fact, the U.S. measure was due to years of worries that drug cartels, violence in the western Mexican state of Michoacan, where gangs extort money from avocado and lime growers by threatening to kidnap and kill them, has spilled over to threats against U.S. inspectors. The out-of-control violence in Michoacan reached a new height on Monday when prosecutors say they were investigating what appears to be the first civilian death caused by landmines being planted by warring drug gangs. That sounds like a pleasant place to live. The state prosecutor's office said that the 79-year-old farmer was killed in the frontline township of Tepalcatepec when his pickup drove over an improvised explosive device. Over the weekend, his 45-year-old son was wounded. The cartels fighting for control of Michoacan, the only state that exports avocados to the U.S., have already used trenches, pillowboxes, homemade armored cars, rocket-propelled grenades, and drones modified to drop small bombs. That sounds like a pleasant place to live. But last week, an Army vehicle was disabled by an IED planted on the road, and 10 soldiers were injured by the mine or other weapons. That was the first known successful use of IEDs against a military target in Mexico. So, well, you should probably grow your own if you can. If you can either simulate a tropical environment inside of your home or have the means to do so outside in the summer. I don't know how avocados are grown, but I'd be willing to find out. But you should definitely be trying to grow your own at some point here. I'm actually planning on growing some trees this year, just so I can go out and plant them. I found some seeds that I want to get out and some various heirloom varieties so that we get more trees back out of it as well. But I want to grow some trees. I really do. Plant them out in some parks, stuff like that. But we'll see what happens with that. Let's grab one from the Blaze. Just a couple more, then we'll do rules of acquisition and how to head out of here for the day. So this popped up on Friday, and I wanted to. This popped up on Thursday, and I wanted to talk about it. But a little bit of a hoax hate crime for you here. Activists rage over racist vandalism at Sacramento High School. The district says it was a black student was caught on camera committing the hoax. From Carlos Garcia. Activist community members were outraged when racist vandalism was found at a Sacramento high school, but officials say they discovered the culprit was a black female student who was caught on camera. Activists marched with signs that read "End Anti-Black Hate" and "No Room for Hate" in front of the C.K. McClatchy High School after someone scrawled "white" and "colored" over the water fountains on Friday. On Thursday, the Sacramento Unified School District said they had identified the perpetrator and said that she was a black female student. Mark T. Harris, the district's race and equity monitor, told KOVR-TV that the student was captured on camera and that she had confessed to the vandalism. He said that he didn't consider the incident racist because of the race of the student, because of course he didn't. Because of course he didn't. I don't believe that the words were on those water fountains were racist, said Harris. I do not believe that they were a hate crime or hate speech. Part of it, quite honestly, is because the admitted perpetrator is an African-American young woman. But if it had been that skinhead kid who used his ballpoint pen to draw swastika tattoos on his arms every day, and then washed them off before he got home and his mom and dad saw him, then it would have been a hate crime. No. Believe it or not, this was a hate crime because this was coming out to have the effect where people would come out and start to march and start to divide further and further. You do something like this, you get people marching, it divides them further and further, and then the people, it alienates the people who you think would have done something like this. It alienates them, and when they say that this was no big deal, then the people who are marching turn around and turn their ire on them. This is a hate crime. All right, last one, then we will check in with the Ferengi rules of acquisition and head out of here for the day. Maybe, if it'll load up. Let's put a refresh on this and see what it does. I know, we're running low on memory. Okay, apparently that's not going to do anything. So let's grab the rules of acquisition. Let's see if this will actually do something. It's trying. Do it again. If not, we'll just go on and, I've been waiting on this one for a while. So, I don't think it's going to do anything for us. Yeah, we'll skip that one for now. We'll bring that over here too. And we'll talk about it possibly a little bit later. But we'll end the show out here and we'll go out and we'll read the Daily Ignoramus after this. But before we do that, the last thing that we always do on this channel is we read one, because we're all capitalists here, and me, I'm an ultra-capitalist. I think I won the 8 values access test. Let's see what this is. So, where were we? We did the actual mathematical one last week, the 54th rule of acquisition. Rate divided by time equals profit, also known as the velocity of wealth. And now we will do something a little bit more philosophical off this one. The 55th rule of acquisition reads as follows. This is from Worlds of Deep Space Nine, Bajor, Fragments and Omens, a novel of DS9. You know what? Let's read this one quick and let's get out of here first, because it looks like it did load up now at this point. It responded. All right. Florida woman Jasmine Martinez uses pandemic loan to hire hitmen to murder rival. From Mark Lungariello. A Florida woman used money from the pandemic relief loan to hire a hitman to murder a rival who dated her ex-boyfriend, police said. Jasmine Martinez allegedly used the federal Paycheck Protection Program to pay a gunman who fatally shot LaShante Jones and wounded her 3-year-old son in a broad daylight attack outside the Miami apartment in May 3rd, 2021, NBC6 reported. Martinez had withdrawn more than $10,000 in the days before the shooting, and after she netted $15,000 from the federal government, she applied to help her single-employee beauty salon, according to an arrest warrant cited by the Miami Herald. Police also arrested alleged middleman Ramiel Robinson and alleged hitman Havon Carter in relation to the murder of Jones, a Transportation Secretary Administration worker. Carter had allegedly filmed a video of himself counting cash just hours after Jones was shot multiple times, according to arrest warrants. Why the fuck would you film yourself? Why would you film yourself after committing a crime like this? Just another day at the office, Carter said on the video, according to the Herald. Attorneys for Martinez and Robinson said the clients had no part in plotting the killing. The TSA worker had allegedly been targeted by Martinez after several run-ins that culminated with the victim testifying in a case against Martinez's boyfriend, reports said. Martinez was arrested in 2016 after hitting Jones, who was dating Martinez's ex, but that case was dropped, the Herald said. That's a perfectly legitimate use of the government money to go back out and kill somebody else, right? No, those paycheck protection loans, they'll never ever be used in the wrong way. No, those are only going to be used to protect paychecks, right? Because it says it right in the name. They'll never use that inappropriately. Come on, guys. What do you think that we would actually use something inappropriately like this? Really? Come on, don't be ridiculous, you guys. All right, now we will read the 55th rule of acquisition and head out of here for the day. So the 55th rule of acquisition, take joy from profit and profit from joy. And there are two things moving in here. Now, of course, first thing you're looking at is the religion of the people of Ferenginar does revolve around profit. Profiting off of people who are less intelligent than you, off-world especially, but on-world as well. Buying and selling property, buying and selling anything that they can get their hands on in order to go back and buy and sell from each other to try to turn around for a profit. That is the way of that's the Ferengi way of life. And given the fact that that is your religion, yes, you should always take joy from that. You should take joy from the things that you believe in religiosity. Now, I don't personally believe in profit in a religious sense, but I do enjoy it, and you should take joy from it as well. But you should also take profit from joy, and that's the most important part of this, is to take profit from joy. I love analyzing what's actually going on in politics. And I'm hoping at some point, especially if we've got the PayPal, the Buy Me a Coffee, the Subscribe Star, which thank you guys for joining the Subscribe Star as well. Because we've got the ways for you to support here, the bits. I see the bits every once in a while on the Twitch side. Thank you, A-Gains, for all the bits that you've thrown over here. Another 100 bits that came in last week as well. I find joy in doing something like this, and even playing video games, even though I don't get as much of an audience when I'm playing video games as I am when I'm reading the news here. But I do take joy in profit. I very much take joy in the profit that, you know, everything that goes off with this. I'm sorry, I take profit from something that brings me joy. Wow, I had that completely backward. I'd like to make a little bit more money off of doing this because I very much enjoy this. So, and they say if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So, that is definitely something to keep in mind off of this. First, yes, whatever your religious belief is, probably not profit. Do take joy from that, but also take profit from the things that you enjoy. If you can find a way to sell what you enjoy, sell it. Get other people involved in it. Try to make money off of it. Because you'll be happier in the long run as you do. And with that, we're going to head out of here for the day, and we are going to go over and check out the Daily Ignoramus. So stick around if you're on the Twitch side. As I always say, stick around if you're on the Twitch side, because we are going to go and do some rating here. So let's get the outro music up here. Where is my outro music? I had to go back and restart. 2 hours and 40 minutes. Not the longest. We've gone longer than this before. 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's what we have for Contemporary today. So I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go make myself something to eat here and finish up the notes for KTZed Redemption, which I believe is just going to be taking some research material over for the Ukraine and the Ottawa stuff and adding a couple other things to the lightning round here. So we've got a good show. We'll be talking about Ukraine, obviously, the Ottawa truck protests. We will be talking about the Hillary and Trump things. We'll be talking about the Kintez Brown story, too, a little bit towards the end. Plus, I've got a great surprise divinity, so come back and join us for that. That is going to be a great time, and we will see you then. That is at 5:30 Central Time, and hopefully I'll have my Rumble issues fixed by then. Sorry for not being on Rumble yet today. We will get that fixed as we go, but you can still check out the channel. We'll have links for that by the show tonight, so go and check that out. Otherwise, come back here tomorrow morning, early in the morning, 7... I'm going to keep saying 15 because I'm going to keep driving myself to get out to 7:15 in the morning. But 7:15 a.m. Central Time for more Contemporary. We will see you then, and until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.